very enlightening discussion. So we are here to discuss a subject that's of interest to all of us, and I know that we've received requests from a number of members on what I want to discuss today. So our theme today is understanding land title conversion under the Land Registration Act and the Land Registration Order 2017. I know these sounds are very mouthful for most of us, but the reason why we are here is that so that we can be able to break down this and get to understand exactly what we are talking about. So I'm going to introduce our guest briefly, and before that, I just want to give a context why we are here. On 12th of January this year, the Ministry of Lands, through the Cabinet Secretary, issued a statement or issued a communication about the issue of land title conversion under the Land Registration Act, number 6 of 2012, and the Land Registration Units Order 2017. And when this information came out, a number of people wanted to understand what exactly it means, what the implication is on land and property owners, and how they'll be able to have some kind of guarantee, so to speak, that their rights will not be infringed on in the process of carrying out this particular initiative. So what so far has come to light is that the Land Registration Act, which was enacted in 2012 to repeal other land registration statutes, has been in place, but then it has not been, the transition to this particular act has not been done in a way that reflects the provision of this particular act. So the ministry and the team is here, a very strong team, has begun a process of land title conversion under this particular act. And of course, there's going to be a number of things that need to be clarified. For instance, what is the process of doing that? If you have an objection, how do you go about it? Or if you have an issue, how do you go about it? And what is the objective? What is the implication? So these are some of the questions we are going to be answering today. And we have a strong team of experts and a strong team from the ministry to be able to break this down to us so that we can be able to understand what exactly this means to us. My name is Henry Chieng. I'm the CEO of CARA, that's the Kenya Alliance of Resident Association. And we have our guest here who we are going to interact with. Let me start from my immediate left. We have Titus Maina. Titus Maina is from our partner organization, Hans Sidel Foundation, who we've been working with very closely to put together this kind of platforms and educate the public on various issues. So he's here representing our partner, Hans Sidel Foundation, and we are happy to have them on board, and we appreciate the support. We have Bwana Ibrahim Wadane, who is the chairman of Land Development and Governance Institute. Of course, he has many other things he does, but I think I'll just introduce that for now, and most of you must be knowing him. And then we have our chief guest, Esther Ogega, who is the Land Secretary at the Ministry of Lands and Physical Planning. And she's leading a team here from the ministry who are going to talk to us about the subject of discussion today. We also have Bwana Abraham Samoe, who is the president of Institution of Surveyors of Kenya, and of course, an expert on the subject matter for today is going to engage us on that particular discussion. We have a number of our members following this proceeding online. We were advised by the hotel that they are restricting physical meetings in terms of the numbers. So we asked some of our members to follow online what we are discussing today. So it's live streaming on Facebook, those who can be able to communicate that or to follow. And of course also trying to do that on YouTube. So how we are going to do this is that the ministry, who are the drivers of this process, are going to make for a presentation on what exactly this process is about, and perhaps in the process answer some of the questions that we've been grappling with. Thereafter, we are going to have our two experts make a reaction to that presentation and maybe make any further clarification. So Ibrahim Wadani is going to make a reaction to that, and then we're also having Abraham Samoy, who is also going to make a reaction to that presentation and also just give their perspective on this particular initiative. Thereafter, we are going to have a plenary from yourselves. You can be able now to come on board and be able to ask questions, seek clarifications, and just get to understand some of the things that you think are not very clear. And we hope that by the end of it all, we should have been able to be at a point where we understand what this initiative is about and we are able to now participate or get involved in one way or the other. For those of you who are tech savvy, we are having a Twitter trend on this particular forum. The hashtag is the Kara Land Forum, hashtag Kara Land Forum, so you can follow that on Twitter. And like I said, we're also having live streaming on our various pages. So you can also be able to perhaps tell those who want to follow live stream to be able to do that. Our Facebook page is the Kenya Alliance of Resident Association. The Kenya Alliance of Resident Association, that's our Facebook page. And YouTube is Kara Kenya. So without taking much time, ladies and gentlemen, allow me now to get straight to the program and invite Titus Maina, who is our partner from Hansdale Foundation, just to make brief remarks before we go to the main speakers. So Titus, karibu.
Guests, ladies and gentlemen, I'm glad to join you for today's forum. On behalf of the Untitled Foundation, I would like to appreciate Kara for putting together this timely forum. Over the years, this platform has provided citizens in Nairobi and now other counties an opportunity to engage with a variety of stakeholders. Those you wouldn't expect to be meeting every other day as you go about your business, to exchange views on pertinent issues such as in government, academia, the media, development cooperation, private sector, and civil society. The Untitled Foundation is a German political foundation. Our work in Kenya through local, state, and non-state actors focuses on the areas of rule of law, good governance, gender, sustainable economic development, and climate change adaptation. Besides Untitled Foundation directly implementing projects, we mainly work through local partners such as Kara, supporting the work of the partners in the focus areas mentioned earlier. Our office in Nairobi covers work in Kenya and Ethiopia. Why is today's topic timely? Once the Gazette notice announcing the conversion of titles came into public limelight, there was anxiety and confusion about what the conversion was about. There was concern whether this conversion will provide an opportunity for mischief, as we have been seeing in the land issues in Kenya. There has been a big information gap and lack of public sensitization. But then, as we are here today, this is going to be different. Kara has organized this forum so that the citizens can learn more about this conversion, how to go about it, and the benefits that will come with the conversion. This being boosting efficiency in transactions and curbing fraud in Kenya. I hope that you'll be able to sufficiently benefit from this forum today. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Titus, for those remarks. And once again, we appreciate the partnership that we have that has enabled us to have this particular forum. So having heard from Titus, like I said, we are going to start with the main presentation from the ministry. And I can see there's a very strong team here from the ministry led by Esther Ogega. Maybe she'll introduce her team when she comes. And once we get their presentation on the subject of discussion today, we are going to get reaction from our experts, and of course, we open it up for plenary. So allow me to now invite Madam Esther Ogega to make her remarks, and of course, to lead the presentation from the ministry. Madam Karibu.
Thank you very much. My name is Esther Ogega. I'm Secretary for Lands. I head the technical team in the ministry. With me, I have a strong technical team. I will introduce them, then they'll just tell you whom they are. As we proceed, we'll take very short time. After that, I will read the Cabinet Secretary's speech. She very much wanted to be here, but she's attending a cabinet meeting. But you should not worry, she's very well represented. After my speech, there'll be a presentation by Mr. David Nyandoro, who is the acting Chief Land Registrar. So allow me to start with the presentation, to the introductions. On my left there, we have Mr. Maritim. Mr. Maritim is the acting director of surveys. Then we have Mr. David Nyandoro. Mr. Nyandoro is the acting chief land registrar. Then we have Mr. Leitich. Mr. Leitich is deputy chief land registrar. Then we have Betty Atieno. Madam Betty is also Deputy Chief Land Registrar. Then we have Madam Berita, Deputy Chief Land Registrar. And we shall be joined by Mr. Musioka, who is a surveyor. So thank you very much. That is my team. I will go on and present the Cabinet Secretary's speech. This is the speech by Farida Karonei, EGH, Cabinet Secretary, on land title conversion under the Land Registration Act number 6 of 2012, and the Land Registration Registration Units Order 2017. Serena Hotel today. The Chief Executive Officer, civil society organizations, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, I take this opportunity to thank Kenya Alliance of Residents Association for inviting me to this meeting. Land issues are very sensitive in Kenya, and I understand the kind of emotions that it evokes. In recognition of these facts, the ministry is making deliberate efforts to enhance accountability, transparency, and efficiency in land administration and management. We launched our strategic plan last year. This strategic plan is founded on 4 key pillars. That is digitalization, national titling, policy, legal and institutional reforms, and decentralization. These strategic directions are geared towards improving service delivery. Digitalization is the ministry's priority project. This program is anchored on legal reforms. We proposed amendments to business laws under what is now cited as the Business Laws Amendment Act of 2020 to introduce electronic land transactions and allow for re-engineering of business processes. These reforms are in tandem with Article 60 of the Constitution that provides for sustainable land use and management. Attempts to digitalize the land transactions have been made by successive regimes since 1999. We drew critical lessons from the false starts and developed a project plan. The starting point in this program was the development of the cadastre. It is at this point in our journey towards digitalizing Nairobi Registration Unit that the need to migrate to the new registration regime arose. The Land Registration Act 2012 was enacted pursuant to Article 68 of the Constitution to revise, consolidate, and rationalize the existing land laws. The Act repealed the Indian Transfer of Property Act of 1822, the Government Lands Act, Cap 280, the Registration of Titles Act, Cap 281, the Land Titles Act, Cap 282, and the Registered Land Act, Cap 300. Each of these pieces of legislation created its own register, making land registration complex. The Land Registration Act seeks to consolidate the above registration regimes by way of a conversion process. This is envisaged under Section 6 of the Act and the Land Registration Registration Units Order of 2017. Section 6 of the Act provides for the establishment of registration units divided into registration sections or blocks. Parcels in each registration section or block are to be numbered consecutively. The conversion process entails preparation of cadastral maps, together with a conversion list indicating the new and the old numbers for parcels of land within the registration unit or registration section or block, and their corresponding acreage. Section 7 and 15 provide for the maintenance of cadastral maps for every registration section. The Land Registration Units Order 2017 prescribes the migration process to the new registration system. Regulation 4, bracket 4, requires publication of the cadastral maps together with a conversion list in the Kenya Gazette and 2 daily newspapers of nationwide circulation. The ministry has commenced the migration process for land parcels within the Nairobi Registration Unit. We have prepared and published cadastral maps and conversion lists for a number of registration sections, blocks. The ministry is preparing the cadastral maps and conversion lists for the remaining registration sections, blocks, for publication. Once this process is completed in Nairobi, we shall embark on converting title deeds in the metropolis. The confusion occasioned by the different regimes had become a breeding ground for fraud, delays in service delivery, centralization of services, and threats to the right to property. The conversion process was supposed to be completed in 2017. However, regulations to operationalize the Act were approved by Parliament in 2017. The ministry started developing the Nairobi Cadastre in 2018 to allow for a seamless transition to the new legal regime. We have digitized all our cadastral maps and our survey databases are tamper-proof. The Land Registration Act 2012 at Section 6, as read with paragraph 4 to 9 of Land Registration Units Order 2017, outlines the conversion procedure. The conversion process entails the following: preparation of cadastral maps together with a conversion list indicating new and old numbers for parcels of land within a registration unit or registration section / block and their corresponding acreages. Number 2, publication of cadastral maps together with a conversion list in the Kenya Gazette and 2 daily newspapers. The notice shall specify a date to be the date after which the register shall be open to the public for transactions or dealings within the registration unit. Regulation 4 of the registration of the Land Registration Units Order 2017 requires, number 3, lodging and consideration of complaints within 90 days of receipt. Number 4, closure of old registers and commencement of transactions in the new register. And number 5, application for replacement of title documents in the closed registers. The cancellation and replacement will migrate the parcel to the new regime while retaining the ownership, size, and the other interests registered against the respective titles. This conversion means that Registry Index Maps, that is RIMs, will be fully used as registration instruments, replacing the deed plans. Boundaries will not be affected because these RIMs are generated from survey plans. Both RIMs and survey plans are accessible to landowners on request for verification of boundary details at the Survey of Kenya, Ruaraka. The use of RIMs will minimize fraud, unlike a deed plan that captures data on one specific parcel. A registry index map displays all land parcels within an area. It is therefore easy to note changes or alterations on the RIM. Ladies and gentlemen, the ministry has put in a number of measures to ensure accountability and enhance public confidence in the exercise. 1, we have developed a catalog of frequently asked questions which are posted on our website, www.lands.go.ke. Number 2, the ministry has also set up a help desk at Ardhi House, Nairobi. 3, the ministry conducted media campaigns for 1 week to sensitize Kenyans on this process. Number 4, we have also sponsored our social media platforms to reach out to more stakeholders. The ministry, in conjunction with the Law Society of Kenya, is developing a manual that will offer guidelines on the entire process. Number 6, in recognition of the public interest in the process, we have always created time to discuss the process during our stakeholder engagement sessions on NLIMS, that is the National Land Information Management System. I thank you once again for giving this opportunity, and I look forward to more engagements on land issues in this country. Thank you. So I request Mr. Nyandoro to proceed.
Morning, ladies and gentlemen. You allow me to take a mask. I hope I'm a distance away from you for purposes of making my voice audio. As Madam Land Secretary did the introduction, my name's are Nyandoro Deputy Nyambazo, the head of Land Registration Unit. It's my privilege and pleasure for this invitation to do a presentation to the CARA, who represent what I might term as the landowners, all the major stakeholders in the land sector. My presentation actually is already, much of it is already covered on what has been given on the speech by the Cabinet Secretary, but we shall be going into details on some of the highlights that have been given, and I will be having my presentation outline. Thank you. We call technology issues. On this presentation, my outline is actually based on the regime, that is the independent constitution, the Constitution 2010, the Land Registration Act, and the Land Registration Youth Order 2017, and of course with a major input on the other existing registrations and the conversion and migration. Having said that, we understand in the Independent Constitution of Kenya 1963, there were a number of registrations that actually regulated or outlined the various regimes of registration of property in our nation. Many of these acts were based on what we inherited before independence. If you look at, for example, what we have in the coast, it is based on the Sultanate when we talk about the 10 coastal mile strip. That's where you get the Land Titles Act, Cap 282, where it is mostly done, it is usually done in Mombasa. Then if you come to the inland, we add what we used to call the native reserves. And we add also the Crown Land Act. This forms the basis in which the laws that were actually formulated to govern matters registration were an historical background. And of course, the Transfer of Property Act of India 1982, which actually came in handy to be used later on for sectional properties for those of you who are doing subleases. It is a borrowed thing. We had the sectional property, but we never actually implemented the sectional property, and in state we decided, I don't know what happened there, we decided sometime that the Indian Transfer Property Act was the way to go by doing subleases. And as you all know, particularly the subleases we talk about, they were based on architectural drawings, and some of them were based on floor plans, meaning there was no uniformity in terms of registration when you talked about sectional properties per se. In terms of the Government and Registration Act, if you look at, we had altogether a unique way of registration which introduced of instruments which were more of, I can call, a historical or elaboration of the history of the parcels. Ideally, in GLA, you could not put your pen on paper and say, this is the title. Why? Because the volume where the entries were done is what was outlined as the register. And that means the government had the register, but the customer had a document, you call it indenture, you call it mortgage where the deed plan was affixed, you call it reconveyance, but per se you were asked to put on paper and say where is the title for the client, for the landowner, you could see somewhere on the line it was not really clear. In terms of the Registration of Titles Act, again we introduced another type of registration, and actually which we thought was the more superior way of registration, whereby the title again became the register. You have the title, and that title is the register, meaning if I have to do a transaction, every transaction will be entered in the title. I hope you are getting. In GLA, we are talking about Government Land Act. We are talking of a volume, in a volume, where you do your entries. But in Registered Land Act, Registration of Titles Act, sorry, Cap 281, we are talking about a title being the register, where you do your entries. Then we have the Registered Land Act, Cap 300, which actually we know deals majority of what I could call the rest of Kenya. Suffice to say that the Government Land Act and the Registration of Titles Act were actually reserved for the few, not for everybody in the Republic. That's why in 1982, we came up with the Registered Land Act Cap 300 to take care of the rest of Kenya. And in that, also we have two documents, or three, depending on the nature of the title. We have the land register, which is the green card, where you do your entries. Or if it's resold, you have the land register, which is the green card, and the white card, but the entry is done in the white card. And the registered proprietor, if he wanted to transact, the entries could be done in the white card, green card, but the title, once he is transacting, then only the encumbrances could be entered in the title. Only the encumbrances. So if you need a transfer, the title has to be cancelled and a new title has to be reissued. But unlike RTA, where you transfer an entry is done and you hand over the title to the new buyer. If you look at this, our independent constitution did not specifically provide how matters land were to be governed. That is why we were borrowing. We had several conflicting laws. And one such registration you could find which was more conflicting is when it came to matters first registration under the Registered Land Act Cap 300, which said first registration can never be challenged in a court of law, whether it was obtained by fraud. And the majority of the cases you have in our courts today, most of them arise out of those adjudications that were irregularly and procedurally done. As you could be aware, most of our communities, we are aware of engaging in matters land. So we could decide and say, the firstborn in the family, if the father is not there, is going to be registered in the title. But what happens? It becomes the absolute and indivisible owner of that title. You cannot challenge him in a court of law. These were matters that were actually affecting many Kenyans, many families who were rendered homeless. And the majority of those cases have taken years in our courts. Hence, when we agitated for the new constitution, one of the key issues that actually went before the committee and the drafters was that we needed to create a chapter in our constitution that could guide the nation in matters governing land. You could notice that it was very difficult to talk about a national land policy in the old regimes because we did not have a single registration regime. Chapter 5 of the Constitution of Kenya basically deals with matters land and environment. And for the first time in our constitution, we could actually have our rights now enshrined in the constitution, and particularly we were able to classify property under Article 61 into 3 categories. We understand under Article 60, one thing that became common is that all land in Kenya belongs to the people of Kenya. Previously, there was no such divination. So my land is my land. I could decide in the midst of a residential area, come up with an industry, because my land was my land. But now under the current constitution, all land belongs to the people of Kenya. That is the paramount thing. That is the beginning. And that gives us now the opportunity where we can actually plan and make decisions in matters land. We have now the classifications, which is public, private, and community. I wish to believe that as Kenyans, we are aware, particularly when it has come to public land, that it came, I could say, like an animal ready for slaughter, and everyone runs away with a piece. We go hunting. It became an hunting ground. That's why when my colleague Musyoka has arrived, he will give the presentation. He will show you the cadastre of Nairobi, and you will actually start to realize that much of our public land we talk today are in private hands. They are encroaching. They have been encroached, like Karura Forest, Ngongu Forest, JKIA, where we have a title in the midst of a runway, part of Wilson Airport in private hands. This is what now the new constitution has brought for us to start to understand that actually there is need to protect public property, which was never there. Public was there by name, but no one could categorically come and say we want to protect that right of public property. We were also provided in terms of management of private land, what we could own, how we would deal with our properties, and actually for the first time, remember we had titles of 999 years. I don't know whether we have anyone apart from the Bible where we read people could exist 999 years. Meaning the old regime could give actually an absolute title indirectly even to a non-citizen. So in any case, there was need to reserve some of these properties, to change and put them into productive use. We were engaged in issues of actually what you might call acquisition. Which acquisition? Government paid money, and in terms of vesting, nothing was happening on the ground. For the first time again, we came up with community land. We know that about 70% of our Kenyan soil, the land is actually community land. We have over 24 counties with community land, which have been listed. But I can tell you that community land goes beyond the 24 counties. Why? In almost all the counties we have in Kenya, there is what we used to call common utilities. If you go to the rural areas up to now, in Central Province, in Kisii, in parts of Ukambani, Ruonyansa, Western, you will get what we used to call cattle clash, cattle dips, which up to now are held communally. So ideally, the issue of now community land, preserving that we all needed to have, became key. If you check majority of this, because they were not properly provided for in the whole constitution, much of what was actually set aside by the communities themselves right now is in private hands. Some of them, developments have changed over time without involving the same community which set apart those parcels. In order to rationalize the anarchy and the recipe we had in the whole regime under the new constitution, Article 68 of the constitution actually gave us a leeway now of consolidating, rationalizing the existing land laws. We talked about the 5, and they could be more. I didn't talk about the Registration of Documents Act, which in certain cases we have created short-term leases through that act, you know. So ideally, under Article now 68, we had a breath of new life, such that now we had in the year 2012, we passed the Land Act of 2012, the Land Registration Act of 2012, the Community Land Act, the Land and Environment Code. You can see in matters registration, we reduced to just one registration act. The Land Act is a policy, I could say, a guiding principle in terms of management of land. but the Land Registration Act sets out the platform how land was to be registered and provided specifically where we were talking of endanger, certificate of title, title deed. It came up with just 2 titles, and the titles now were to be based in terms of the tenure, whether it is freehold or leasehold. Again, under this very constitution, for the first time we also came up with the Land and Environment Code, which actually recognized that an issue relating land was not an ordinary issue, required a specialized court to handle matters relating to land. Hence, you can understand why you could find cases of 1982 still in our courts, because the then judiciary was not professionally trained when it came to matters land. What in essence it means that the Land Registration Act we are now talking about repealed the old acts. They were repealed under when the land registration came into being. I want to say, even with the repeal, we did not repeal and move away immediately and say we have repealed, we have the new Land Registration Act, and so we move to the Land Registration Act. We had to understand that there was need for transition, and therefore we had to create a process on how we had to move from the old constitution laws to the new constitution law. And section 104, the register maintained under any of the repealed act shall on the commencement of this act be deemed to be the land register for the corresponding registration units established under this act. What the section is verbatimly saying that in terms of migrating, it was critical that we check in matters what I might summarize as rights and liabilities that entailed to land and ownership. That we had to create to transit, and when we are transiting, we don't say we have discarded, but we move away or we move on to the new regime. I want to highlight, and Madam in her speech spoke about it, and I want to highlight it here, that if you calculate, we had our constitution in 2010. In 2012, we had the Land Registration Act. 5 years from the act, when the act was passed, we were actually supposed to migrate within 5 years. However, here we are in the process now, trying or preparing actually to migrate, and you can see it's beyond 5 years. Therefore, there was a need for us actually during all this time to understand that all transactions which have been ongoing are taken care of by the Land Registration Act, particularly the saving provisions, section 104 to section 109. And it's important for us to understand that in migration and transiting, then if you are at a mortgage, you are going to move with that mortgage. If you had created a church, you have to move with that. And there is also an obligation. If the banks you have paid, they have now also to discharge. They cannot say we are not going to discharge because we are migrating to the new regime. I want us again to note that, as I said, we have only two titles: certificate of title or certificate of lease. If, for avoidance of doubt, majority of us are what I call the greater part of Kenyan, who we have the title deed, if you look at most of it is written absolute. And I had a friend ask, these titles which were absolute, how can they be a certificate? Actually, it is just a term, how you look at it. Certificate of title means the property is freehold. We only talk of certificate of title when we are talking of freehold tenure. However, if you are a freehold tenure and you are a non-Kenyan, that freehold under the current constitution is reduced to a leasehold for a term not exceeding 90 years. 99, sorry, from the term of that title. Not 99 from the time of the current constitution, from the time of that title. We have had cases where we have had those coming to surrender and asking, can I get a title now under the new constitution for 99 years? No, it is from the time the title was issued. So what, again, under the transition provision provided was that the cabinet secretary was to make regulations contemplated under section 110 of rules or other administrative acts which will give issue or undertaken before the commencement of this act under any of the acts of parliament repealed by this act or by any other law shall continue to be in force. What I'm looking at section 108, actually, we have been talking about land registration unit order of 2017. And that is one of the reasons that we were not able to migrate, to convert to the new regime without having regulations in place that were to guide the process of conversion. One thing we need to get is that on the conversion and the migration of titles, one thing was key, that as that order clearly said, the order, if I could give a previous, that this order was approved by Parliament on 22nd November 2017. This order contains the regulations that provides for the legal framework for setting up of the consultated registration regime. This order was to give effect to Article 68 and Section 6 of the Land Registration Act 2012. Allow me now to go to the issue in terms, because the order provides in detail and that was covered in Madam's speech, procedure for conversion and migration. Section 6 of the Land Registration Act provided that registration will be done under registration units. It gives us the procedure that where we have been talking, if you look at this section, we were more inclined to the Registered Land Act Cap 300. Because if it is blocks, we are saying Nairobi, block 10, stroke this. If you are talking about property somewhere in Kiambu, you might get Kiambu, a certain name here, then the unit. This is the mode that the new act provided under Section 6 of the Land Registration Act. And to actualize that part, now we had the Land Registration Unit Order 2017. Probably this gives you why this order was called registration units, because it outlines how the new registration regime or multitude it could take. Paragraph 4 to 9 of this order outlines the procedure. One such procedure we have already said was the creation of the land registration units. Then we have the creation of the cadastral map and Geo-Referencing. We realized that for us to move to the new registration regime, if you are talking about the old regime, to bring you to perspective to understand, we are at what we call land reference number, which actually we used to register under Government Land Act and Registration of Titles Act. We had land reference number. But when you go to Cap 300, we had more of what I said, the block system, and which was different from the land reference, because under that cap, the land reference at the same time was the title number. But in GLA, that's Government Land Act, Land Titles Act in Mombasa, and the Registration of Titles Act, the land reference was different from the title number. There were two numbers. And this is what we were supposed, actually, the law comes up to harmonize, so that we have a single uniform or unified numbering system. And it is not possible to do this without actually taking the first step of the creation of the cadastre. The Land Registration Act clearly provided that the Director of Survey, or the authority responsible for mapping, was to come up with the cadastre. As you heard in Madam's speech for the first time, we have the cadastre for Nairobi, which reveals so many things, and for the first time which allowed us actually to know how much land the government owned in Nairobi, even if it is in private hands. So what we get here, the cadastre, I would say, it is the foundation on which the registration is based. You cannot do registration or purport to do registration if the cadastre is not prepared. And to put it in simple terms, for those of us who are not surveyors, what Madam Land Secretary said, cadastre is nothing but a map. What some of us used to call RIMs. But the difference between the cadastre and RIMs is that the RIMs is, the cadastre is georeferenced. It has coordinates, which actually will be able to identify and tell you this land X is here and not where you want to purport it to be. Then in terms of section of property, where we used to use those maps and we call it Villa A in apartment number 10. If you look at it ideally, that is not in real terms a unique identifier, because how many people could have done those villas and they have 1 to 10. So you will find those numbers. In our mode of old registration, the only thing that came in handy to separate was giving that number you call GLA number, IR number, the title number. But ideally, you could not pin and say apartment number this in Villa Estate or whichever is on this floor. You could not say it with certainty. Now the cadastre is not only able to deal with land on the ground as we know it, but it's also able to deal with the units, what we call sectional properties. Again, something comes here which is handy. I hope most of us will have a chance to go through the Sectional Properties Act. We have had issues where you call it reversional interest, where you do 100 apartments or villas, the way you might call it. People come buy those titles, you give them subleases, and still the owner retains the reversional interest. Means if the term of that lease expires, that property goes back to the vendor absolutely. There was no, I could verbatimly say, there was no law that provided when my long-term lease expires, how do I renew? It was at the behest of the developer, the owner. There was no clear law that I got this villa for 50 years have expired, how do I renew? Then, having had units where we could have created shareholdings, we were left at the mercy of what you call the management companies. I want to charge, I must look for the management company so that they give me consent to charge. I want to transfer, I must look for the management company to consent. And we want to say we do not want whatever is coming up on which was reserved as a playground. Then we have to go through the management company, and sometimes the management company says, remember you bought yours is on 2nd floor. We are doing other developments here. So they could decide and even change the plan of what was actually intended. And many Kenyans, particularly the people of middle income earners, became frustrated because what they purchased is not what they have. The areas that were reserved, some of them are no longer there. Now, under the new act and the new provisions, the issue of geo-referencing became key to sectional properties, that I can renew my lease. And if I buy that villa, I expect nothing less than a certificate of lease. Very unique. You are not going to say, give me that sublease. It's a law, the current Land Registration Act has no place for subleases. You will do it, but you have to give a certificate of lease. And now the certificate of lease has conditions including the process of renewal of that lease. Meaning for the first time in our history, property owners in apartments would actually make their own decisions if they wanted to charge their property. They will not need to go through the so-called management company. They will have powers when it comes, and right when it comes to common areas which are shared. And again, the Act, Section of Property Act has said, you will not start and say, I'm planning a half or a quarter of this area so that you continue mutilating. The time you present your plan, your sectional plan, they must be complete. Because even what we call the common areas or vacant areas, playgrounds, car parks, they will now for the first time have a title. So that you are able to pin and say you cannot use this. That is about the cadastre. As I've said again, when the presentation will be done, you will also realize that we have been on matters land for many years. And these many years, a lot has happened. But the cadastre does not only give us the status today, but also it has a catalog of history. That if I wanted to know how Nairobi looked like in the 1960s, then we have a cadastre which actually the maps which have been traced backward. And then we can be able to follow what changed over time. So we have that part of the history which before, particularly the aspiring homeowners got into rough waters when it came to issues what we call doing due diligence. You want to buy, you want to be sure that what you are buying is right. It is not a public utility. It was actually, or you could believe, was the search signed by the land registrar. That is due diligence. But if you check the rulings that have come from court, they say that such is not conclusive evidence. So meaning the homeowners and people dealing in property were actually left at the mercy of what the decision maker could decide depending on the occasion and the moment. But now, under the cadastre, you can actually query. You can even get that detailed information on that property, backward even to where it came from, to give you the confidence to invest, to own a home. I want to believe that all of us got the gist, the news, also what happened when houses were demolished at JKIA, that part of Syokimau. People had invested millions. Poshy homes came down in a twinkling of an eye. People lost lives. That is what the old regime and the absence of cadastre, that is the recipe we were in. That you build a home, you buy, you have a title, and you are told, this is a paper, this land belongs to the airport. You have seen houses taken down in this part of Westlands. We are not new to some of these issues because of issues of when we come to matters history. Tracing backward was very difficult. But now the cadastre actually gives us, because it's developed in layers, what I think surveyors could call stratas, for a better word. That you have those layers, the stratas, which can tell you at this time it was like by this, and now this is the position. Then another process after the creation of the cadastre was the preparation of the conversion list, comprising of the block numbers, area, old and new numbers. I want to say that the cadastre for Nairobi is done. We have 141 blocks. Director, you will correct me if I'm wrong, in Nairobi. On 30th December 2020, our cabinet secretary, in line with the law, published the conversion list for purpose of converting and migrating to the new Land Registration Act. The migration and the conversion list actually was to tell you if your land was land reference number 209/1020, now the new number will be Nairobi block 2 this number. It is changing nothing. In terms of the ownership, nothing changed. In terms of acreage, nothing changes. We have had cases, and you saw that in all of us in the media, that now people were afraid and were being told, please don't surrender your titles when you are asked, because wameanza kuchukua mashamba. It became an issue, and as a ministry, we had to rush very fast and to make some clarifications through a number of press conferences. You saw my CS, my chief administrative secretary, and we have met from there, moved to even meet the media houses because of the manner of reporting, not actually based on facts, but based on hearsay, sending wrong signals to the landowners and actually Kenyans at large, and even beyond, the investors too. All that was provided was in accordance with the Land Registration Unit Order number 20 of 2017. There is nothing else that the Cabinet Secretary published outside that order. And there is a process prior to that publication. The cadastre, as I said, was done, forwarded to the office of the Chief Land Registrar by the Director of Survey, because it's the one mandated to do that work. And the Act also says the Chief Land Registrar then has within reasonable time to present it to the Cabinet Secretary. And actually the Act goes ahead to say the Cabinet Secretary is under obligation that within 4 months of receiving, he is supposed to have gazetted. Then the next step was the publication. After the CS gazetted, then there is a period now for Kenyans, for the landowners to interrogate the details provided, and then if you are not satisfied, the law clearly said within 90 days, then you make an application using Form RL 96, whereby you say, no, I have objection, I have seen in your list, you have said my land is 2 acres, but my land is 3 acres. You make an application, you say, I have seen in your list, you have said my land has been subdivided to 3 portions. No, I have my title, I have never subdivided. That is provided in the law and is part of the process. Actually, when we published, the first list was for 22 blocks, and then on 26th January, we also published another list of 19 blocks. As I said, we have 141 blocks. So this, if those who have not seen, we have also seen something that actually meant Kenyans to believe that only 22 blocks were in Nairobi. We want to say that is not the correct position from the ministry and from the government. These blocks lists will be generated as we clean, as we clear. Remember, there are issues of overlaps, there are issues of encroachment, and for your information, we are not gazetting. Where you have a public land and you want us to gazette because you have a title. So there are owners, if I put it in quotes, you will not see it on the list. Because how do I publish, or how does the ministry take that confidence to publish and tell you about a title on the runway in JKIA? Is it possible? It's not. So this list is still on, and we hope we are able to finalize in the shortest time possible. Then upon this, we are also to have this publication now in the local dailies, in the media, and some of this what we are doing, so that the landowners and Kenyans come to understand. Then in terms of the issue of conversion, you see, we will not convert and then continue with the old registers which we talked about. That means we will have to close the old registers on board as we migrate. And for avoidance of doubt for the public also, they have a right, if they so feel, to put a caution on the property if they are not satisfied that the conversion is done properly. Then the law also provides that the registrar is to publish in a notice in the 2 newspapers of nationwide circulation. Then also put an announcement on radio stations of nationwide coverage, reporting on how people or landowners should surrender their titles in exchange for the new title. And there is a form prescribed from RLA 97 for you to do that. But for this part to commence, remember there was a mandatory 90 days that we are in. Immediately it means on the lapse of the 90 days, then those ones that were already gazetted will be legal when it comes to April 1st. If I'm right, Ben? When it comes to April 1st, for the ones we gazetted in December, it will be legal for us to continue registering them in the old regimes. There is a procedure laid for the surrender, and in that surrender, there are 2 things that the orders clearly given out. One is the surrender of the original title. Then that surrender must be accompanied by ID or passport, depending on the document, identification document you used. Then this order, I want to say that revokes the Land Registration District Order of 1981. In conclusion, in a minute, madam, please. In conclusion, I want to say, what are we seeing in the reform? It is the creating land registration legal framework aligned to the Constitution of Kenya 2010. Reforming the land sector, business process engineering, technological change, good land governance, ease of doing business, and the right to property ownership. If, with those many words, if all I've said, I think this is what I call the takeaway. Thank you very much. That one? Yeah. Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. That was a very good presentation, sir. Yeah, he has. Thank you very much. And thank you so much, Mr. Nyandoro, for that elaborate presentation. We thought we should leave no doubt. He's usually very thorough. That is how he does his presentation. So I hope you are benefiting from it. And you've heard that because of the sectional properties, the one who has the title will not tell you, shikilia nyumba yako huko juu, I want to remove mine. It will not happen. So what we are doing is to protect your property, and you have been part of the whole process because we have been doing public participation. Actually, the issue of conversion, we had discussed it in our forums. So, but we are just clarifying what we said. And as Mr. Nyandoro has said, for sectional properties, when we come geo-referencing, please don't think we are taking away your house. We shall soon announce, because those ones done with architectural drawings, for it to fit in the cadastre, it has to contain geospatial data. So we shall put things right by visiting those areas, and we shall announce soon. So I will welcome Mr. Musioka to do a very brief presentation on the cadastre, so that we don't assume everyone knows what cadastre is. Thank you very much. Welcome, Mr. Musioka.
Mr. Henry Ochieng, CEO Kara. All protocols observed. Good morning. My name is David Musioka from a geospatial engineer from Survey of Kenya. So I'll take you through the cadastre. Is from the previous presenters, you've heard that the cadastre for Nairobi is ready. So I want just to take you through the process we've gone through to come up with the cadastre for Nairobi, and then I will dive into just show you a sneak preview of the live cadastre. So just for introduction, basically when you talk about thank you. So basically when we talk about cadastre, we're just talking about combination of parcel information for Nairobi, which we've geo-referenced and brought it together such that you can be able to relate any parcel information with the abattoirs. So we've covered the whole of Nairobi, and at the moment the cadastre is ready. We've just been in the process of just doing some cleanup on some anomalies here and there. But as we talk right now, we have a good percentage of all the parcels within Nairobi captured. So allow me to take you through a brief process which we've gone through to come up with the cadastre. First of all, we began by scanning the maps, the survey plans, and the RIMs, because we are working in a digital environment, so we wanted to have this in soft copy. So we began by scanning these survey plans. Then from there we did geo-referencing of the survey plans in order to have all the parcels together. I think maybe let me just give some stages in terms of geo-referencing. For us to geo-reference, actually we're using coordinates, and as you all know, most of the surveys which have been done in Nairobi, the surveyors have been using local coordinates, majorly Cassini. So we wanted to use the universal coordinate system, that is UTM. So we went through the process of converting these so that we can have them in UTM, and that is what we used to geo-reference these survey plans. Then after that we did vectorization, which is capturing the parcel information. Having parcels together, then we went to do attribution. Attribution is actually just capturing the parcel information within the parcels. The survey plans within themselves, they have what we call the plan directory, that is contains information concerning that particular parcel, the land registration number or the parcel number. Then we have other supportive information like acreage for that particular parcel. Then we also captured information on the process of authentication for those survey plans, such that at the end of the day, we have all the information regarding that parcel captured. The aim of this, we wanted to have information which you can be able to query. That is, when you query a particular parcel, then you can get information regarding that particular parcel. As Mr. Nyandoro has said earlier on, we have also captured the historical data concerning these parcels. That is, all the data regarding these surveys. We have information dated back up to the 1940s. So when you query a particular parcel, you can get that historical data from when the survey was begun, and then the subsequent changes which have occurred in that particular parcel. That is, if it is maybe a case of change of ownership, change of user, all that historical data, we have built topological data regarding those parcels. So what we wanted to have at the end of the day is information which we can be able to link to the National Land Information System. As you are all aware, we've been building that. So the cadastre has been linked to the NLIMS, and also on board we have information from other departments. That is include land administration, physical planning and registration. So that information has been linked to the cadastre. So at the end of the day, we want, when you pick on a particular parcel, all the data from all these departments and other supportive departments, when you query a particular parcel, you can get that information and you can follow up the history concerning this information in the cadastre. So this platform has also been linked to other services because at the end of the day, we want all the land transactions linked together, business transactions and also the technical transactions. So this platform has been linked to other business platforms so that all the land transactions, you can be able to access them in this platform. Through that process, we've been able to generate the cadastre. This is just a map showing the preview of the cadastre, the way it looks like. As you can see we have all the parcel information which we've captured based on the blocks we have in Nairobi. As Mr. Nandoro said, initially when we began, we had the registered blocks in Nairobi, but we had some of the areas which had not been covered in terms of blocks. So we had to go through the process of building in the new blocks. And that's why now the process of conversion came in. That is to make sure that all the data which has been captured within the previous regimes, they are converted to align to the current act, that is the Land Registration Act of 2012. All the parcels we've captured so far, already each of them has been assigned to a particular block, and the process right now is now being completed, because as you know, all those parcels which were to be converted are being gazetted based on what we've captured in the cadastre. Through the process also we've captured sectional properties. And Mr. Nandoro has also mentioned that following the enactment of the Sectional Property Act 2020, it has been of interest that we capture sectional property. So we've captured sectional property in areas where the areas where already we have information which could enable us to geo-reference. So we've geo-referenced the survey plans which contains these plans and captured the units. As you can see from the screen, what we want is, at the end of the day, we can query a particular unit to know the mother parcel, which holds that particular unit, which block it lies on, the particular floor, and then the particular unit. So we've done that 3D model such that when you query in the cadastre, if you're interested with a unit in third floor, you can be able to get that information regarding that particular unit. So this is part of the information which we have in the cadastre. Also, through the process, we've also captured public land. We've received information regarding the parcels of land which belong to public. And as you can see, this is just a distribution of the parcels we have in Nairobi, which are public land. We got this information which enables us to, in the process of capturing public land, get to understand how many categories of public land do we have. In the process, we've captured public land under those categories, that is green spaces, protected areas, all down up to industrial areas. So in the cadastre, we have information regarding these categories of public land. At the moment, you can be able to tell how many parcels of land within Nairobi lie under green spaces. So we've captured the history concerning these parcels of land, and the interest also has been to know how much of public land has been vested and how much has not been vested. Because in the process, we also discovered that we have some public land which is still lying in private hands at the moment. So that is information which also we wanted to understand, so that due process can be undertaken to make sure that that land which has been acquired by the government but lies in private hands, it's properly vested into the government. Through the process also, we've been able to come up with a number of discoveries. As Mr. Nyandoro said, there has been a lot of anomalies in the cadastre, which actually we're in the process of making sure that that has been corrected so that we have the correct up-to-date cadastre. Some of the anomalies might be a bit involving, but the process still is underway to make sure that we clean up these anomalies. Some of them, as you said, includes encroachments. We have areas where we have encroachments, mostly in public land. Also, we have areas where we have overlaps from surveys which have been done previously. So these are some of anomalies which we've discovered in the process of doing the cadastre. But all of them are being cleaned so that at the end of the day, what needs to be addressed is addressed. We have the clean cadastre. Just as a preview, this is just one of the areas where we have anomalies. Like, for example, what you can see, that is Karura Forest. What I have highlighted there is encroachment into the forest. We have parcels encroaching into the green spaces. These documents, that is the survey plans, when they're in the records, when they're in the shelves, you might not be able to tell exactly where they lie until when you geo-reference them now in the cadastre platform, that you can be able to tell where they lie. And this informs us even when it comes to decision making, because these are parcels which have already been registered, but when you geo-reference is when you realize that they are squarely falling in public land, that is in forested areas. So allow me to just take you to the live cadastre. Just hope you can see it clearly. This is the live cadastre in the mapping platform. This is Embakasi area, block 105 and block 136. We also have this is Kilimani area, that is block 17, block 15. So we've mapped all these parcels, and in the process of mapping, we also been overlaying that data in updated satellite imagery, so that at any particular moment as you do the mapping, we can be able to tell what is the status of these parcels on the ground in terms of the development pattern. And also that helps us also to, in terms of also building the historical data, to be able to know what is the current status of that particular parcel on the ground. Let me give you a preview of section of property. This is block 140, Embakasi, that is Nyayo Iris Estate. We've captured part of the data which has already been geo-referenced. In most of the areas, we have documents which some of them were registered under the RDA. So we were not able to capture the same because we didn't have coordinates which can be geo-referenced. But as Madam Esther said, the process of getting the information for geo-referencing is underway so that we can make sure that all the units under section of property are captured and brought into the platform. Can give you a preview on public land. So this is a public land platform. We have all these parcels which you can see. We have the information regarding those parcels, the particular category where they lie on, and in terms of registration, what is the status in terms of what is the registry status for those parcels, so that will enable us to be able to know up to what extent have these parcels gone in terms of vesting, and if there is a need for them to be, if they still fall in private hands, what is the process to be followed in order for them to be vested into the government. So that's it about the cadastre. So as you all know, land transactions are happening every day. So we've been following up actually through the Director of Survey to get information which comes in as the land transactions go on, so that at any particular moment we can be able to update the cadastre, make sure that it is updated at any particular moment, and any transaction regarding land, as you transact, you're transacting with parcels which have to the correct status at the point of transaction. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Musyoka, and all of us who are here. Those are the presentations we had from the ministry. So we shall respond from the other matters. We have all the experts here. I'll hand over to the chairman. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for those very useful presentations. I think they are quite detailed and responded to some of the questions that we already received from members. I know that we have clarification need to be made, and we have maybe some questions. We also have people following online, and they might also be having some questions to ask. So in the interest of time, we had two experts who we also wanted to just hear from their perspective on the subject of discussion today. So they're going to make a very brief reaction to those presentations, and Bwana Mwadhane and the ISK president are going to tell us whether they agree that this process is actually the solution to the challenge that we've had in terms of land issues, and if there is something that they think that needs to be clarified or some kind of information that we need to know, they should be able to share that with us. So I'm going to ask Ibrahim Mwadhane to just give a very brief reaction to those presentations. And Mwadhane is no stranger to the land sector. He's a former chairman of ISK, and he's done quite a bit of work on issues of land in this country. So he's well versed with the discussion that we're having today. So he's going to make a brief reaction to that, and then we are going to ask the ISK president to also give a brief reaction from his perspective, and we are then going to hear from you. So, Bwana Mwadhane, please.
Thank you very much, everyone. Good morning. The remarks from the Cabinet Secretary as read by Esther, the presentation from David Nyandoro and the younger David here, Musyoka, they are very, very rich. They're extremely rich. Those of us who are in the field of land development and conveyance can appreciate. They make our perspective very, very deep. And they also make it easy for me to make my quick overview comment. But I want to open by saying that I did a write-up for the Business Daily 3 weeks back to sensitize the public on this issue. And let me just read some two comments that I got from some fairly senior and serious professionals. One said the fear in Kenya is that land issues are entangled with corruption. Many will need assistance and civic education on this issue. The second one said the fears associated with this process should be cleared first, Esther, through civic education. Otherwise, the process will face opposition. Just when I was sitting here, Professor Mairura, the chairman of the Town Planning Association, says that the way, and I think this should be of interest to you, Musyoka, and Director Mr. Weldon, that the way and manner in which land stroke survey office generates plot LR numbering system is not clear and remains a mystery to many in Kenya. Can this be clearly explained and rationalized in the new digital system? And I think it speaks clearly. And I know a lot of people are baffled by Kenya's numbering system. That's something that you can work on. But having said that, let me mention that, and I enter this discussion, quick remarks from the point that you can therefore see CEO Henry and Maina, Hansido, and Esther from the ministry, that what you are doing is actually responding to the concern that a lot of people who are already are having, that they need to understand, they need civic education. Therefore, if you can give it in a systematic manner, the way you are actually going around this, and well done, Kara, and thank you, Ministry, I think you will be hitting the heart of the problem, the misunderstanding and the information gap. Then I'll also mention that I'm quite happy, impressed actually, about the recent initiatives by the Ministry of Lands. I'll tell you, because I've worked there and I'm also a practicing surveyor, that what, for instance, David Musyoka here is sharing takes a lot of technical input and a lot of time. So seeing it happen is a relief, because I've kept on saying this country has overstated the problem. The problem statement is very clear, but the solutions need to be done, and they call for work. And this is the work that the ministry is embarking on. So we really want to encourage the ministry. And my feeling from my communication perspective is that the ministry is doing too much, but not speaking enough about it. It's not shouting its song. It's not singing its song. Our sister state, Rwanda, does a number of things. It's a much smaller state, so I never quite like comparing Rwanda with Kenya. The challenges are different because of the vastness and the numbers of people involved, even the number of records when you come to land administration. But Rwanda will sing its song so loudly that the entire world will know what it's doing every time. It's very heavy on e-space. So Esther, go back to the CS and tell her to sing the story of what you are doing even more loudly. It is important for the country to know and the world also to know. But having said that, let me say in regard to this subject today, I am very happy as a practitioner, because I know, and those of you who are lawyers or land development professionals know that it has been a very complicated process dealing with the 5 systems of registration that we have had in this country. It has been extremely cumbersome. And it is very difficult also for landowners who have to come from Kisii County to Nairobi because they have a title under the RTA. Somebody in Kilifi has to go to the Coast Land Registry because he has a title under the Land Titles Act. Somebody in Nyeri has a title under GLA, has to come all the way to Nairobi. But we kept asking, can this not be devolved so that people can deal with their properties nearer? And this is sincerely the beginning of that road. So there are clear advantages that one appreciates from this process that is beginning, because it provides a youth form system. It also provides an opportunity for devolving land administration in terms of dealing with any parcel of land in any county, as opposed to the past where we had to either come to Nairobi, some would go to their county registries, but this now means we can begin to deal with the land registry within where a parcel is based, within the jurisdiction of the parcel. That is a fresh change. That is a fresh change. If you explain that, ministry, and I think you need to echo that point to people, because it bugs people that they have to come from Garissa to Nairobi to do their transactions with all the attendant costs. So that is a very big take. Then there is also this matter of the Registry Index Map. The Registry Index Map can actually, in one single sheet, take hundreds of parcels. And remember, from the past, a deed plan would only support just one ownership. But when you take one single sheet of RIM, you are talking about hundreds of parcels. So you actually support several titles all at once. That is also a very useful change. And when I was chatting a practicing planner, he was very excited that he will not have to deal with a deed plan when he's trying to generate what they call the part development plan when people go to them for planning proposals. He will take a sheet within which he can see all the other parcels, all the accesses, therefore gets a good overview of how the parcel the new parcels can be shaped out to optimize on the existing accesses and any other features that are within that area. So that is also a very useful area that is coming through. But they also, I needed to mention that I had highlighted that there will be challenges that one envisages, and I'm going through this quickly because I know we have lost time, but I think we lost time for what the cause. The first one that I noted, again, Esther, please deal with this, the technical capacity. I know the ministry well. I've read the numbers of staff in the survey department, the planning, the registration department. There is an acute capacity challenge. And what you've just seen Musyoka explaining and Nyandoro is not easy to explain. So since we have you here, I don't know how many other people elsewhere can explain the same. So it's important to work on the issue of capacity, and I'll make a quick suggestion as we finish, so that you can then escalate knowledge and have more people doing what you're doing. Then there's the issue of conversion errors. That will happen. And I plead with the audience not to hang the ministry. It must happen. When you're transferring data from one record to another, you must have errors. They will happen, but they need to be explained. They need to be acted on very quickly and in a very friendly manner if people are not going to hang the ministry for the errors. Some will say it is deliberate because that's their easiest way of getting around it, so that you defeat their interests. So please be ready for that. There's also the aspect of public sensitization. I think you've just begun. I'll also make a comment about it as I wind up my quick remarks. The data is overwhelming. I don't know what we shall do about it. I've read both sets of the initial releases of the cadastral, the lists, and the details of the parcel sizes. It is overwhelming. David, I don't know whether you've tried to actually go through the first set, then you try to go through the second one. If you're not reader smart, you're reading smart, and you do not know how to go to your block quickly, and you start reading from the first block, you will take a very long time. So it is overwhelming to the public. I don't know what we can do, but when you spread, there are thousands and thousands of numbers on one single release. It's really overwhelming. But I think just take note because we have to think about how to get people to read it smartly. Then the issue of the trust on the ministry. The other day, somebody again who is fairly enlightened asked me, Mwadhane, you, in your right capacity, in your right mind, would you take your title to the ministry? Do you trust they can give it back to you? And I knew he was hitting at what everybody thinks. So you need to work on this issue of trust. Again, I'll make a quick comment about this as I wind up. Then for Musyoka and Maritime Director, it is very difficult to tamper with a deed plan ordinarily because there's a lot of information that is within a deed plan from the past. The RIM is a big broadsheet, which in 5 seconds, if I'm good at reading line work, I can actually amend a parcel. And I know it has happened through some irregular interventions. So I would implore you to appreciate that it is very easy to tamper with an RIM, much easier than it was to tamper with a deed plan, and therefore make sure that the security of whether it's hard copy or it's a digital copy of the RIM is really well done. Otherwise, that can be a very easy entry for a change of parcel, and just as it is convenient to plan with it, it is also convenient to quickly change. So make changing the RIM very difficult. You either must have the password to be able to do so. You know how to handle the protocols on security, so that we make that difficult for anybody who may want to. On what can be done, some of the things that you can quickly do going forward on this. First, on sensitization. I thought you can clone yourselves smartly. You started at the national level, and I think you're doing well. Use the media as well as best you can. Then to take what you are doing to nearer to the people, you can use your regional notes. I know you have Nakuru, you have Mombasa, you have Embu, you have Nyeri, you have Kisumu, you have Kakamega. You can do this kind of program there for the counties, so that you empower the county officers to have, the regional and county officers to have the knowledge you are now sharing, so that then they can take it to their lower level, to the county level. That will quickly make the county officers have this information. And I'm happy to see Dr. Nguzo, all the way from Kilifi, is here. He's a good example of what can happen, because what he learns now, he can share with his entire team in Kilifi, which team can then go down to the people easily and escalate the information. So see whether you can try that. And then the use of professional bodies. You can see, and it's true, anybody who spoke here is either a member of LSK or ISK or the Planners Institute. So you can also partner with the professional bodies to ensure that this information can actually fly to more people within a faster period, because these are your brothers and sisters who have the same information. And in fact, you can call people like Nyandoro, people like Leitish. They will be able to handle the LSK discussions. Musioka and Maritim here will be able to handle the ISK, and I'm sure there are planners who can also escalate that information to other institutions. And I'm sure the ISK president may want to mention that during his remarks. Then on the issue of titles and returning titles, replacing titles is going to be the greatest challenge. And as I say this, I request you to learn from, we recently tried to replace money, notes. And we saw how hard it was to replace notes. It was like people did not want to replace notes, even when they are told and assured that you'll give in your notes and you'll get fresh notes. Some actually took the route of using the money instead of returning the money. You could learn lessons that Kenyans are normally very reluctant to take old documents unless there's a mechanism to get them to take them there. Then two, the replacement of the passports. Up till now, we have been extending the deadline for replacing the manual passports for the digital ones. And it tells you something about the practice, the mindset of the ordinary Kenyan. So please use that lesson, the lessons from those institutions, to try and get a scenario which works for Kenyans in this case. And that is in that regard, I make the next remark that you can replace the old titles during transactions. Because when I have to do a transaction, I have to come to the ministry anyway, I have to come to the county office anyway. At that moment, it becomes very easy for me to replace the document. You could also replace documents when people are coming to correct errors for various reasons. There are always documents that require to be replaced because they had an error here or there. Again, use that to get people to replace. Then I don't know how you can, what kind of incentives you can develop. But please think about what incentives you could think about that can make people go to replace their old documents. I'm saying this because members, before the Land Registration Act came into place, we had about 5 million titles in this country, just about. Now if you think about the period, the rigor it takes to replace those titles in various counties, it's massive. It's massive time. It's massive also technical work. So the Kenyans need to probably be taken through this through a very, very, very caring process and very flexible process so that they do it without feeling unduly penalized. Then I also suggest, Esther, David, Maritime, you could demonstrate through demonstrate efficiency and transparency of this process by documenting. You can use even video, documenting some cases of people who are coming to replace titles. Demonstrate to the public that somebody actually comes through and presents those documents, and within a certain period, and that period will be very important because that is the trigger that will make people see that it works. That one walks in, one gets the process done, and one walks back with a document, and nothing untoward happens to them. So if you can do a video demo, it doesn't have to be long at all. It's just going to, and you have some. And throw those things through our WhatsApp media and other social media. I can tell you, you will begin to preempt the fears in people, and the trust issue can be dealt with through that kind of a thing. Then finally, I think going forward, just like you see the Passport Agency has done, be very careful about time limits. Because if it has not worked, the time limit just means you have not got your results. And we are operationalizing a law. And if the law seems to have some challenges, we can easily request for changes. But please manage people so that they replace titles over a period. You can have limits, but manage the limits so that if you have not captured enough of the title holders, then you do not close them out just because the law says you must shut. I think in the interest of time, I want to leave it there. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Madane, for those very, very useful recommendations. I'm sure this will go to improve the process. I particularly agree with you on the aspect of civic education, because we've seen very, very noble ideas not flying because people just didn't understand one or two things. So I think we need to invest in that and make sure that people are properly educated. So allow me to ask Abraham Samoe, who is currently the chairman of Institution of Surveyors of Kenya, which has over 4,000 professionals in land and property sector. And Samoe will just share with us his perspective as ISK and also as a professional on this particular exercise. So Samoe, can you?
Thank you, Eric. The Land Secretary, Esther Ogega, my peer panelist, Ibrahim Wathane, who is also the former chairman of ISK, and now serving Kenyans as a chair, Land Development and Governance Institute. Distinguished guests, good morning. I think mine would be very easy. I think the people who've spoken before me have spoken quite well, quite eloquently, and I think we've had wonderful presentations from Nyandoro and Mr. Musyoka. I know ISK and myself, we've been involved in this process of land reform for the last 20 years. So when I was listening to Nyandoro, I was actually amazed of the journey we've taken as Kenyans in land reform. I think we have not looked back. We are just focused on the state we are. But if we look back and see right from land policy, constitution making, land law review, and now we are the administrative implementation, I think is a great stride for Kenyans. I look at why are people concerned about this positive progress. When you're talking about reforming the land sector, I'm sure this is what they anticipated. And here it is. Why are people having questions? And the question is about land rights and protecting property rights. I think that has been the question since colonial time. If you look at how Kenyans interact with land, how they were dispossessed, how the elites after independence took land, how access to land by women, by vulnerable groups. There is a lot of mistrust in the land sector. So you will do a lot of things in the legislative, in the institutional framework, but the mindset, I think, is what needs rebooting. And I think that's what my senior Mwadhane was saying. How do we now change the mindset of Kenyans on land, on all these processes? And this land registration system that we have now actually creates a flat surface. I was looking at it. In the next couple of years, we will be looking at Kenya under one regime. That is a very powerful, you have all parcels in Kenya in one regime. We've had very many registration regimes, the GLA, the LTA, but now if we have one under the cadastre, I think the cadastre is a very powerful basis for land registration. I would say, I would echo what my colleague has said, is we move now to the campaign of encouraging people to adopt, to accept. I can see many people have not accepted that we are here now, to accept that there is conversion in line with the law. And that calls us for a campaign by the ministry to encourage people to come, change your title. And I would think perhaps even having a tracking, mechanism whereby you ask somebody, perhaps log in, apply for a new title, drop your original title at the Ministry of Lands. It will take you 10 days to get your fresh title, to take you 14 days. Keep tracking. Is there feedback? Like when you apply for a motor vehicle, you are told, come pick your title, come pick your vehicle title. I think that would go a long way in allaying fears. I think what people fear is just bringing an original title, leaving it at the reception, and they trust that you will call them to pick the new one. I think that is what people are mostly afraid of. As professionals, we've been involved in this space, I think, as my senior said, and we would continually want to engage, because this is where we practice and we hear the common man and anybody investing in land, what issues they have on land. And they are different depending on how they utilize the land and access to land. So I think, Esther, as ISK, we are ready to work with you, especially in this campaign, sensitizing our clients and people we interact with, so that we are able to have a successful transition. I think it will be very important to have a transition, that we complete the reform process. Technology, will, of course, will be an added advantage. I think when we talked about land reform 20 years ago, maybe we didn't have the benefits of technology that we have now. And I think it would really go a long way in ensuring there is faster adoption of that. Geo-referencing, I think, is a very also, it would be very important that all the land is geo-referenced, and it curbs a lot of things. Geo-referenced makes your parcel to the point, to the millimeter. I don't know how people are going to build walls, because a stone is like half a foot. But a geo-referenced parcel would be to the millimeter, to the point. So I think when we have land geo-referenced, we reduce a lot of disputes. Most of the disputes are about boundaries, about encroachment and all this. I think geo-referencing would be very key. And we expect that perhaps, Esther, you can have further investment into that. Technology is convenient, but not cheap. So I think we are able to enable Survey of Kenya, add more technical people. The good thing is we have very many graduates in the geospatial science now. Unlike 20 years ago when we had only 30 or less from the University of Nairobi, now we have hundreds coming out. So can the country benefit from that? And is a multiplier. You invest in reforming the land sector, in all that, you will gain the benefits in terms of investment. We talk about Rwanda and what the international investors look at: security of land, access to land rights, security of tenure, and these are all linked to what we do. And I think if we invest in that, we're likely to see Nairobi regaining its space regionally as an investment destination. So I think I would end there, because the session really is for the participants to ask the experts. I'm sure not every day you meet Nyandoro, you meet Weldon, you meet Esther or Ibrahim. So this is your opportunity to get your questions answered and anything you may have on the land sector. So thank you Henry, and thank you for having us.
Thank you very much, Bwana ISK President, for those remarks. And of course, I know we are getting richer and richer as we go by. So I know we've really taken so much time, but for good reason. But we cannot send you away without also hearing from you. I'm sure there could be one or two comments or a few. So we are going to have this opportunity just to hear from you. And I can already see so many hands up. So that means that we should then really restrict our time in terms of the time you take to ask a question. So let's agree that we're going to have one question per person, very brief, maximum 1 minute, directed to whoever you want to answer the question, so that we can have as many of you as possible to ask questions. Please, we don't want to leave anybody out, but we are also very sensitive about the time. So there should be a microphone around. Where's the microphone? Okay, there's one there. Somebody can take it round. So let's start with this side, and then we'll come to that other side. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. I can see 6 hands here. So if you can have those. Where's the microphone? Let's start here.
Maybe take 3 questions at a time. I think it's faster that way.
Sorry?
Than individual questions. Sorry. Instead of taking individual questions, maybe you can take 3 questions and have those addressed for time. If you do 1 question, you know.
No, I don't do one question. I'm just taking this side and then come this side. Yeah.
Thank you, Henry. My name is Andrew Franklin. I have a very simple question that I've been looking for an answer since the 27th of August, 2010, when my freehold title was revoked by 65-1 of the Constitution. Will the cadaster now show that on my title, my number, will it now say leasehold title, no longer freehold? Does it have captured the fact that I'm an alien who purchased property here in 1993? And will it then show, as I just learned, that instead of a period of time of 99 years of peppercorn rent, in accordance with the Constitution, I will be getting, I guess, 35 more years. But I've been waiting over 10 years to have my status on my property, my residential property, regularized by you people, including complying with the National Land Commission's directives in 2013 to go to Artie House and submit all the paperwork, which was already didn't care much about. Thank you for your time.
Okay, thank you, sir. Thank you, sir. Madam Esther, Land Secretary, all protocols observed. My name is Dr. Mbuzo from the County Government of Kilifi. In 2013, devolution came, and the people from the coast region were asking for the devolution of the coast registry in Mombasa. Now, with the repeal of these 5 regimes and this conversion migration process, my question is, will this end the movement of people from Kilifi, Kwale, Tana River, Lamu, going to Mombasa to do such and actually synchronize this into the county registries? Thank you so much.
Okay, my name is Cyrus. Thank you very much for giving us this opportunity to come and
listened to the Ministry of Lands on these matters. Thank you very much, Mwadhane. You have raised very important points which you wanted to clear. Now, my question is about the Cession Property Act. You have told us that there's going to be transition from the lease, which we have agreed and signed with the owners or the developers. Is it going to be just a transition, or it is going to involve another process? Because there is an agreement between the developer and the person who has a long-term lease. That's a proper legal agreement. How is it going to be vacated so that you can bring over the Cession Property Act provisions? Thank you.
Thank you. My name is Timothy Maina from the Day One Residents Association. The main question that I was asked is what is happening to areas which are not listed in both schedules which have been released, like Block 60, which is a very big area. What do residents do? It's not listed in the list that you gave out, and does the deadline still apply to them? It's still not there.
Thank you very much. Thank you. I think I've taken some numbers, so let's go to the
Morning, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Hugo, Gabriel Hugo. I just want to make a suggestion. Listening to what Ibrahim Mohamed said and David Musyoka about the migration to the new titles, I'm just wondering, is it necessary for the ministry to get back the old titles to process new ones? We do know when you want to make a land transfer, there are records at the ministry. Why can't the ministry use those records after blocking a particular area and then call the residents or the title owners of that area and say, your new titles are ready, come and collect them in exchange for the old ones? Thank you.
Okay. My name is Engineer Dorothy Masinde from Rector Terraces, Northlands. I have a couple of questions, but I'll make it brief. How do we partner with existing structures like residents associations and management companies to pass this information along and give the residents and landowners opportunities to ask questions? I have questions about, is there a cost to this? What is the process? Are we going to have queuing like we did for Duma Number to replace our land titles? How long after I have given my title deed do I get back the new title deed? And then a bonus to this, I hope that this is going to help us to sort some of the boundary disputes that are existing across the country. I have one which I would really appreciate.
Thank you very much.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Penny Gatei, a public speaker and a professional mediator. My question is, we know land is a very intense issue and it's got very complicated or complex issues. What I'm asking the ministry, you said that from the time you started this transition, you thought it would take 5 years, but it's taken a bit longer. Now my question is, are you liaising with the judiciary or with the court to make it easy? Because those are some of the issues. Because we have so many cases lying in the court which are of the undisputed lands. So is the ministry going to liaise with the judiciary or with the court to make it easy for the transition or the conversion to get the new lands? Because like for me, I belong to two counties, Nairobi and Kiambu, and we have land issues. So that is one of the major issues. Is the ministry going to liaise with the judiciary? That is my concern, to make it easy. Thank you.
Thank you for the opportunity. My name is Kate Cole. I'm a brand strategist, currently consulting for Optimum Group. My query, which I believe I speak for people who are selling land, especially the private companies in this country, and I want to know, is there a plan to specifically deal with these people who have direct contact to the public to explain to them what is going to happen to their title deeds? We are finding ourselves in a position where we are standing forth for the government, yet we do not have that representation to speak for the government. So for me, this would be a very important session where you set aside an opportunity for stakeholders to meet with the Ministry of Lands and perhaps even with the judiciary to explain to people. For example, in the case of Optiven, where we have at least 75% of our investors in the diaspora calling us, asking us to give back money that they invested about 10 years ago because they are losing their land. Of course, we know the situation on the ground. We have taken our due diligence and communicated whatever information we have with regard to the Gazette notice and the different acts that have been put into place. But we still need to have stakeholder engagement with the different companies. In a country where every day a real estate company is being registered and 3 others are disappearing with people's money, I'm sure you understand the emotional attachment to this matter. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much for that. The last one, please, very briefly.
Yes, good morning. My name is Teresia Dirango. I'm an advocate of the High Court. My question is directed particularly to Mr. Nyandoro. Thank you so much for your presentation. But I wonder, you said that when we surrender the absolute titles, you get certificates instead, 99-year leases, and in some cases we are experiencing 50-year leases. What is the rationale for this? And secondly, what happens when the leases expire? Do the titles revert back to the government? Does the current registered owner get a preemptive right to renew these titles? What exactly happens after the lease is up, yet the proprietor initially had an absolute title?
Thank you very much for that, very clear. So what I'm going to do is that let's have those answered, and then I'm going to come to this other side for the other question. So Madam Esther and your team, perhaps you can take those questions and share them accordingly for the answers. So you can just come here so that you can respond to this.
Thank you very much. And thank you, participants, for your questions. It shows that, as we said from the beginning, the issue of land is sensitive and everyone is watching. So I will first of all want to talk about communication, civic education, because the matter has come up before I share out the questions and who to answer. For communication, I agree this is a major component, because if we don't communicate, we shall be doing a lot of nothing. So what the ministry has done is that we have come up with a communication strategy through the help of our development partners like FAO, European Union, and the others, and it was launched last month. And we have already started the public participation. It is ongoing. And we have also involved, in fact, even also sensitizing our staff so that they are all aware and they can also be ambassadors. In this program that is already currently ongoing, like today we are here, there is another forum at Crown Plaza doing public participation and sensitizing the staff. In the program, we also have the judiciary, because we know even some of these titles we are talking about, they are in courts, standing surety for some people. Others are in banks. Others are in various places. So we have involved all those stakeholders. And public participation, we have a big program which we are rolling out. We've started rolling out, but remember, we have started with Nairobi. So mainly now we are concentrating on Nairobi. And as we said in the CS's speech, we shall move to the metropolis, which we have already started making those arrangements. So the issue of communication has been addressed, public participation and the communication strategy has been addressed like that. The other issue I would like to address is the issue asked by Dr. Nguzo about whether we are synchronizing the registries. Thank you very much, Mr. Nguzo. You remember we said we are dealing with a National Land Information Management System. You will be able to access this system from wherever you are in this world, because we have got the portals. We have the e-citizen portal, where you'll be accessing the way you access when you are getting your driving license. Ministry of Lands has a slot there. So in future, and very soon, you will not have to go to the land registry. You can do it from the comfort of your home. So the issue of land registry, which I will tie up with the issue of staffing that Mr. Mwadhane has talked about, we are hoping, and that is what we envisage, that we shall be favored by digitization. Because you realize when you digitize, most of those issues can be handled through the system. And then we also have a call center where you can call, ask questions, and you can be answered. But the transactions will be online for most of this. And when it comes to the issue of surrendering titles, I can see that is where people are worried. We shall not do it alone. As we have been engaging the professionals and the public, we shall do it together. We shall come up on how to do it together with all of you, so that you will know whether you just surrender your title, where does it go? Because it bears your name, it bears everything else. So what will happen once you surrender that title and you get a new one? So those are issues we shall discuss, and Mr. Nyandoro will tell you how we get rid of those titles that have been surrendered. Because it's not the first time titles are being surrendered, they have been surrendered before. So I think, Mr. Mwadhane, we really appreciate your comments, and also the president of ISK. And then let me say something about the RIM, because this is where the worry is versus the deed plan. The RIM is not a standalone document, isn't it? That's why we've said it is like a conveyor belt. Where did this RIM originate? And we are talking about the counties, isn't it? Maybe it originated from a county government, went on, it was planned, it was surveyed, and finally the RIM is done, then goes for registration, isn't it? So there are so many documents that come up to the RIM. It's not alone. So there is no way you will tamper with RIM, and there are many other documents in the process. All those are one, and that is what we are merging and coming up with the cadastre and this RIM. So there are many other reference documents. We don't expect it to be tampered with. All the security measures have been taken into consideration, and we have engaged a lot of professionals and other stakeholders. It's a team that is doing this work. So we are aware that there has been a lot of fraud in land transactions, and we are going to address that. So we should not worry about that. And for public participation, that one we shall do, and civic education. We are also doing it through the media. So when you see that long list of the conversion, we have put it in blocks. I think there's block 2, there's block this. So just check what your number is, and we'll do it in a human, we shall treat it humanly. So we don't want to throw you out, you are late or you are what. We shall all, and you'll also be telling us, that's why we are talking with you today, so that we shall be able to engage with you. I saw the other day the passport, the new passport, the time was extended, isn't it? So we are human, and we know we can talk. So we should not worry very much. When we get there, we shall handle it as it comes, provided we are not in breach of the law. You know, the law is there, and the courts are waiting for us, isn't it? And the wananchi like you are waiting for us. So we want to be within the confines of the law. So let me go to, we have noted all the issues, what we need when we shall do a report to the Cabinet Secretary so that he can know what we discussed there. So I'll go to the Q&A. There is the one on by Andrew Franklin. Franklin, yes. Yeah, Franklin. Mr. Nyandoro, about the old title, the 999 years, you can answer that, and the conversion and the time.
I hope I'm audible enough so that I don't waste time when
Let's go following online.
Oh, sorry. Okay.
So let's be brief and to the point because of time.
Madam Rand Secretary, if you allow me, the question for Andrew, I will want to tie it together with the question of Ndirangu, because they are related about issues of freehold and leasehold, and in terms of what we call a renewal or extension. Let me start by saying, Andrew, your obligations of applying for extension or renewal is not extinguished by the conversion process. It is not. You have that still obligation, you have that, and you have the preemptive right that you have that priority to apply for the renewal. What you alluded to is that, you see, it was by constitution that your title actually is no longer freehold, rather leasehold, which we cannot take away from the constitution because that is the parent law of the land. However, your preemptive right to seek for renewal is still there, and you can initiate that process. You should not wait that once conversion is done. And I can assure you, even when conversion is done, still your property will be in your name, and it will show that your property, the term has expired and you need to renew. Let us not take conversion to mean vis-a-vis extension versus renewal. In what Ndirangu asked, I would want to say, I think you did not get my sentiment correctly. No one is losing freehold because of the process of conversion. If you have dealt with the ministry under the new Land Act, you have noticed that even when you are doing change of user, you do not lose your freehold interest. That's why we are giving a freehold grant. The only thing I said about is that where you used to have a grant, we now have certificate of title, the equivalence of freehold. That's what I said. And I said we have also certificate of lease. If you have been given, like what Andrew is talking about, he wants to renew for a further term of 50, 60 years, then when he's renewing, he will be given certificate of lease. That's what I said, because the law is very clear. We only have certificate of title if it's freehold, and certificate of lease if it is leasehold. I think I hope I've responded to the two questions. And if something is not clear, then you can let me know.
Yes, also the issue of sectional properties. You can, or you can give it to another registrar to answer. Are you going to vacate the agreements with management companies,
okay,
all that?
I think my brother Ben, you'll say something about it, and my sister Perita, but let me say this. We said there are rights that will go with the new registration moving from the old regimes. But let's understand, as we sit today, I want to believe this question was asked by Cyrus. That Cyrus, let's understand one thing today, that we have the new Section of Property Act that repealed the law before. Number two, allow me to say this, and I started that by saying, we were borrowing from what we call the Indian Transfer of Property Act. If you look at those long-term leases per se, you cannot fix them to a certain law under the registration regimes, even in the old regimes. Can I say it is something which I could call an irregularity, which we continued for a long time, and we presumed it to be law, but was not anchored in law. Whatever engagements you have, it will remain an agreement for that purpose. But it will not infringe on now the law, because if your agreement is in contrary to the law, then that agreement is null and void ab initio. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Nyandoro and Cyrus. So, as we said, we shall engage. So someone will not lose their property. We do not expect anyone to lose their property. So the management companies are part of property owners. So we shall be with you, and then we decide, because I believe your agreements are protected by some law, isn't it? So we are not working, holding some laws singly and putting others aside. So we shall bring all this together. We shall look at all sides how to handle it. Then we shall see how to go about it. So be assured that this is a process that we shall undertake together.
We are only afraid that these landlords, the people who develop land,
yes,
they could go to court,
yes,
and they say we are under long-term lease with these people, and the person pays the rent in advance.
Yes.
The 16 million or the 15 million.
Yes.
So the lease was ending at this time.
Yes.
So the remaining value to the final end of the lease, then that is mine. So they may go to court and say, this is our agreement. So you cannot change the agreement, because that is what we agreed at a personal level. And this is a policy of government of the Section of Property, which now vacates that kind of agreement between an individual and then brings a new rights which are not there.
No, the law is simply correcting maybe something that had not been done very well. And to benefit, we don't want people to keep on losing their properties because of some agreements that may not be supported by some law. So we shall look at what the law says, and we know it is the most recent, the Section of Properties. We had to, I like the support it got from Parliament and the public and from the professional bodies. It has gone through that. So we shall look at it in line with the law. And I don't think it will be very difficult for us to address that one. And most of these people you are seeing seated here answering your questions are lawyers. And I believe we have very many lawyers here. So it is the Section of Properties Act is empowering the property owner to be able to actually manage their property better. Why should you keep on getting permission from somebody to charge your property? Si ulimulipa pesa yote. So we are saying you paid for it, then you should freely enjoy your property without having to refer to someone all the time. That is the freedom the Act is giving you. And we engaged those management companies when we were coming up with this law. Tunajua sheria ni ya mwananchi, so we did that. So we shall keep on engaging where matters are not clear. And the process of returning the titles, that one will be very clear because there is a suggestion that it is done online, then you keep tracking. We shall do that. We already have a tracking system for titling. and which we are just converting to the new NLIMS. So that one we shall be able to do it clearly. We don't want to lose any document. And we have assured the public that. Judiciary, we talked about it. Stakeholder engagement. And then the surrender of absolute title. Can that one, a registrar, you should explain? And the other issue I think we should do, I think he's gone, Mr. Andrew. He's very busy talking. I was thinking we should look, Mr. Nyandoro, we should look at his case. He raises that issue in many forums. He doesn't know. He's doing something else. So Mr. Nyandoro, after this, let's have a discussion with him. We see where he's stuck. Because he's brought up this issue in very, very many forums. Then we see how we fast track his issue, how we can handle it. Maybe even the new system will now help us. I think we have almost... Yes, Mr. Leitich, you can come and now.
I think just one.
There's something you want to respond? Okay.
Yeah, just one issue. I think someone raised the issue about the areas not listed in the Gazette notice.
Just come here so that online people can.
Yeah, good afternoon. Thank you. Mine is just very brief. I think it's regarding the issue of areas listed or not listed so far in the Gazette notice. I think if you look at the regulations, that's the Land Registration Order 2017. It's very clear under paragraph 5. The period 90 days start running from the date of gazettement. So those that have not been gazetted, we're still gazetting more. We're doing it piecemeal. So for those that have not been gazetted, the period will run from the date of gazettement. The 90 days will run. So far we've not done much. Just the way David said, or Nyandoro said, we've only gazetted, I think, 44. So we still have quite a number. There's about 36 or so more to gazette. So it will run from the date of gazettement. So don't be worried. Your parcels will appear at one of the Gazette notices. Thank you.
Thank you very much for the response, and so far so good, much as we were short our time. So we're going to take a few minutes to take these questions from this side. Again, just the same way we did this side, make it very brief and to the point so that you can get a response, and then we just be winding up. So let's start from the first row and we go back. So from the lady here. Brief and to the point.
Yes, brief and to the point. Thank you very much for the fantastic presentation. My name is Pamela Gale from Rural Company. I'd just like to say that I appreciate the tracking system that you have put in place, but just understanding the way Kenyans think. Even as a lawyer, I'll tell you, very many lawyers have so much propaganda about this, and I'm sure you've met them. And of course, for those of us in this area of practice, we have explained to them over and over and over again that this is a process based from the Constitution. Many people don't understand. So I think one thing you can do, and most Kenyans, I tell you sadly, we will not go online and do this thing the way you want, just because of the way Kenyans are wired. They are paranoid, they're suspicious, they're always suspecting government, which is unfortunate. What you perhaps need to do is you can allow for two avenues. Those who want to do it online, who are advanced that way, and those who want to come physically. And I think for you, the solution will be a fantastic turnaround time. Because I can tell you, most Kenyans, sadly, because of the way they are wired, will also not bring their title. You give them some tracking and tell them come back in 10 days. They simply will not do that. So what you need to do is deliver like we do in the Western world and simply say, you come within 3 hours, I don't know if that was for 5 hours, or by COP, you have your title. And if you don't have your title, then you obviously give some undertaking that if you don't have your title by 5, you return back your title, with a confirmation. I don't know, you need to think through that. But I can tell you, if you don't do that, you have a problem. And simply because of this, the same advocate, sadly, if someone doesn't then surrender the title and keep their title for whatever period, will take you to court. And we don't want people to go to court because it will sabotage the whole process. But when people go to court, it will sabotage this whole thing that you're doing, which is very good. So please, let's think about efficiency and turnaround time, because I think that will give people the comfort that is required to cooperate.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Next. Who was there from this desk? Okay, at the end.
Thank you all the presenters and Kara for organizing the event at Untitled. My name is Dr. Charles Kamala. I'm an advocate. And my question I want to raise, I also have clients whose land is being grabbed and the GOM registry is closed and so on, but that is specific. Let me generalize and just ask about this assumption that there's only one title deed for one piece of land. There are 10. So it's not one person, you don't come with your title. 9 people will come and claim that land. My question therefore becomes, it was illustrated in relation to public land. Karura Forest has been allocated. Gom Forest allocated. Those are public ones, and the government is saying it's irregular on the face of it, we'll take it back. We will not even compensate you without going to court, and we have, the prototype is Mao ecosystem. Whether it is the Ogiek with the court order from the African court, get out with the violence and no compensation. The property developers get out, but that's public land. So the question becomes, and this is the real one, about the compensation for this multiplicity of title deeds, be it Karura, that the government gave, legitimate, whether it's Moi government, but now it's the other government which is kicking people out. The government indemnifies. So I heard the statement being made, you are supposed to, the registry is not sufficient, and the court is saying that nowadays. So there is some other standard of verifying which is a legitimate title. So I wanted to really ask whether we can be given clarity on that. The issue of the multiple title deeds, is it the first come who you give it to, or and is there compensation? Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. At the back. Yeah.
Hello everyone. It's a very good meeting. My name is Ondebo and I work in media information. I just wanted to ask the Minister of Lands whether there is any time limit or sanctions if somebody is unwilling to return the documents. And maybe next to that, I would like to know, since the ministry already has the sizes, it has the records, it has ownership, why don't you just convert to the new regime without having to ask someone to come to you to surrender their documents to you? And then there's also the issue of freehold and leasehold. It's a very thorny issue because in the past we have seen in a metropolitan area, specifically Machakos and Kajiado, where you buy land on freehold basis, and then when the title is released, you find it is leasehold. So this is definitely a big problem. That's why you find people do not necessarily, people are suspicious of government. People don't trust government. It is going to be very difficult to expect them to surrender their documents to you so that you can give them, you can put them in the new register when you already have access to their records, and you don't necessarily need these people. All you need to do is convert them for them and then let them come and collect.
Thank you very much.
Just one last thing on KRA, because I saw the KRA PIN has to also be submitted to you. When somebody is registering afresh under the new regime, is Kenya Revenue Authority going to be collecting money from them? That one seems to be a problem. Thank you.
Asante sana. Next. Right. Yeah.
My name is Mr. Mungai. I have a title deed in Nairobi. And I'm suspicious. If I take my title deed to the registry and I leave it there, I go home, I'm tired. I don't know how long it will take for me to get the new title. If I die tomorrow, my children will have no title, they will have nothing to claim. Because when they come to claim, they will be asked, where is your title, original title? They don't have. So I was suggesting, can the ministry developer system. I come to your office with my original title. You take a photocopy of that title, you take my details, you give me my title back, I go home. When you finish processing my new title, you tell me to come. Then I exchange my title.
Thank you very much. Okay, next. Right. Who was next there? The other next row, please quickly.
I'm Nancy Mwangi from JKUAT. Also a practicing surveyor and a member of ISK. I'm sure the ministry doesn't want to leave anyone behind, especially in the building of the cadastre. And my concern is a group of Kenyans who have found themselves in a very unfortunate situation. The Physical Planning Act has stipulated the minimum sizes of properties, especially in subdivisions. But you find that there are land buying companies that bought land subdivided into very small portions which cannot be approved for purposes of registration. So these members of the public are still holding their share certificates, and the subdivisions have not been registered processed by the Director of Survey because they cannot get the approvals from the county governments because the sizes are below what is expected. So it means the cadastre, as it is being captured, does not capture the land that is owned by this Kenyan who has a share certificate because there's no survey plan for it. So what happens to these Kenyans who are having the share certificates and their properties don't appear in any survey plan and there are no approvals, there seems to be no hope of registration. Number two, the other group is there are a number of Kenyans also out there who are holding letters of allotments. And some of them have come across. They have no idea of the process. And also the process is very expensive. So we also have a group of Kenyans with letters of allotment. Their properties have never been surveyed, have not been registered. So will they be left out of the cadastre or what happens?
Thank you.
That's
Thank
my
you very
question.
much. Thank you. Behind you. Yeah, just give it.
Good afternoon, how are you all? My name is Michael Kilonzo. I'm representing the people with disability. One, I wanted to find out how inclusive is the new title to people who are visually impaired, and how much in your civic education on this enlightenment to the people who can't, who are deaf and have hard of hearing. Secondly, I wanted to find out, I'm in the fourth generation. Our uncle was entrusted with a title. It still bears his name. We are 4 families. At what point will that title be subdivided to the 4 families if it is submitted to the lands? Thank you.
Asante sana. Thank you very much. Very useful questions.
My name is Isaac Kifue from Marine Farm Organization, which is in Kiambu. But I find matters concerning farms who are well organized are better. But when we come like places like in Nairobi, where I am a resident, I would like to comment on things like public service provision in Nairobi, especially in Embakasi, where I find that there is a lot of contradiction. Even planners never followed the right organization. It seems that there is no coordination in planning in Nairobi, especially in Embakasi, because I am aware of a time we planned Nairobi water and sewage project involving Kenya Airways and the World Bank, and now where that plan was built, where that installation was made, some people have come digging quarries in such a way that these the system can collapse any time. Yes.
Your question, please, so that you can go to the next person.
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh, wait a minute. There is another thing that is happening there, that the Chinese are building roads where we installed the water system. They are uprooting the water system. And when you ask them, they say, Kura says, ask Kura. How do you coordinate such development activities?
Thank you very much, Asante Sana. Next, please, briefly, please.
Francis Nyangaka. Mine is a suggestion to Kara. Just remembered by saying with a disability. Next time, when you hold such a meeting, please remember to come in with a sign language person. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Very good suggestion. Behind you, next.
My name is Saya Gishanga. Just a quick question about land in Nairobi. We have property that is among the ones that are right now, the numbers are being changed. But when we go to look for the file, when you do a search, the file is missing. What will happen to something like that? Or is this part of the reason why the file is missing?
Thank you, thank you. I think that's the last one. Okay, second one, please. Yeah.
Thank you. My name is Mairura Mwenga, the chairman of Town and County Plan Association of Kenya. Madam, thank you for raising that question on my behalf because I thought I was running late. But a quick one, and that's specifically what I want to ask. The LR numbers generation and whatever LR 108/, what's the basis? How are they generated? Are they by respect to the county they are in, province they are in, or what? I think we need to be clear on this particular item. And I want to give one example. I've been dealing with a client whose land was LR 108/14 in 1990. He applied for change of use, and suddenly the registration number of that property changed. So it just shocked me. Is it the one you change the use, then the LR number changes? It's a mystery. And yet I thought it could be a very simple thing. Next, I think I wish that also as we do this exercise, and in partnership with what the ministry is doing, I think it's important that the two levels of government needs to be working together strongly, because indeed all these transactions at one point or the other, the national government, the county government need to work together as provided for in the constitution. And then lastly, speaking as a town planner, I think it's important that in the registration process, and I'm happy that the land secretary did allude to this, the planning documents, indeed property creation starts with, for example, land subdivision as a planning, land use planning exercise. But in the registration and documentation process, this document is always missing. No wonder what Mzee was raising here arises subsequently, because it's at that stage that lands are set aside for roads, lands set aside for sewerage works, and so on. So when in the documentation process, that very key and initial document, the land use planning document is missing, then you can see the challenges that we face. And I was therefore proposing that really that must be one of the very fundamental documents that must always be available. Then we shall safeguard against losses of our roads, public utilities, and public land. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Lastly.
Thank you. I think on this issue of changing of titles, I want to suggest a solution because, like you've told us, there is no, your land is not changing in size, it's only the numbering. We've learned a lot from eCitizen, and my suggestion is that instead of everybody surrendering their title, just enable us to go to eCitizen, print a document that shows that my land title number was 209 XXX, but now the new number is block XYZ. That will stop all of us from having to come to lands to queue for our lands. But when I want to change my title, when I want to transfer, I come with my title and that document that is like a search, I submit, I get a new title. Because I don't see the value of actually changing title. There is absolutely no value. You can just give me a document to show I have an old document, I have a new number, but it's the same land reference. My other question, my question is on somebody raised the issue of allocations. I have an allocation letter for a certain municipality, which I've been trying to trace the survey documents so that we can get the title, and it has been a real challenge. And my question is, how do you get that? For titles that are with banks, I would want to ask, so who will change the title? Is it the bank? Is it the owner of the land? How is the bank secured? And finally, I am a director of a place called Zaria Village. We have just processed deed plans for the whole parcel. So now, where does that leave us? Do we have now to go back, get the block title, or do we still use the deed plans? How is that going to happen? Because we are just in between the deed plans and registration. I would really love some clarification. Thank you very much.
Asante sana. Thank you very much all for your question, and also very, very useful suggestions in terms of what can be done to improve the process. So I'm going to allow the ministry team to again respond to those questions, and then we can wrap up.
Thank you very much. I will start with the comment from Karen that as Kenyans we know ourselves, and some people might take time. I cannot say they are afraid. Let's say they will take time to actually learn how to use the new system, so they may still insist on manual, others will still go online, and all that. What I can say is that the NLIMS that we are coming up with is a fully digital system, but we are coming up with a data center. And in this data center, what we want to try to avoid is a process where we shall keep on insisting that you have to go talk to a registrar, you talk to a surveyor, you talk to a land adjudication officer, you talk to a land administration officer. We are trying to make that very easy. So what will happen at the data center or wherever we are, we'll have a small place where you will still communicate online. But you are within that precinct. But you will be able to communicate online to the officer that you want. It will be faster because the more we queue and queue and queue, that is where inefficiency comes from. And then the face-to-face contact that we are used to might not be very ideal, because that is now where bias comes in, that I will process someone's documents because I saw them, but what happens to that person who is not able to come to the office? So this is what we are trying to avoid by treating all Kenyans equally. There are those who can afford fare to go to offices, others cannot. So what will they do? Yet they have this young person, daughter or son they'll just sit at home and transact. So we shall look at that, but we shall have those transitional provisions between the manual and the online. But we have also requested our professional colleagues, because we also belong to these organizations, that they also start going digital, isn't it? For example, if you are presenting a map, a plan, or these legal documents, what are you going to do, those agreements from the lawyers, to make sure, you can even make them very simple such that they can be easy to handle on the system. So it's just what we said, we need all to change. The ministry and also us, the public. Because if we need to adopt, if you go to other countries, like we've been, because before we came up with this system, we went to other countries, we benchmarked, and we saw what they have done. Everyone now can transact online. Those queues have ended, and we are saying now we need to get to that. So that one we shall address. And then Dr. Kamala, about the public land, Karura Forest, what we have seen in the cadastre, we are saying we are also generating a history. So that map you've seen, it's telling us Karura Forest was this much, isn't it? Then so much of this has gone. Through what means? So we have got that history. So we shall sit down and see what to do. It's not a matter of the Ministry of Lands alone. So we shall see what to do about that. And this history will also help us protect our public lands, including forests. Because once we are destroying forests, then the issue of climate change, there are so many issues that come into play. What will happen when you finish all the forests? So we shall look at it in line with the history and what triggered that. There are so many factors that we shall consider. About the issue of multiple titles, that one we can say we have the documents. It's possible to tell which is genuine title and which is fake. So we shall look at it. And the work we are doing about the digitization is really helping us to unearth all those issues. We have unearthed a lot. So if you have a genuine document, the records are there and we are able to tell this is a genuine document. If you have a title that didn't come from the right sources, I don't think we are able to tell that. And the system is really helping us, plus the officers. We know through our records what is genuine and what is not. And then the issue of the returning titles and the suspicion. If you look at the old titles you have, you will see the act that gave you that title. So it might not be very useful if you keep it, but we shall look at it. And we also want to prevent a situation where some titles will be kept, then they emerge at a certain point. So if you have that title, how to dispose of it will be very open and very clear, and your suggestions are very welcome so that we look at it together. But there should be no fear that someone will manipulate your records or something like that. And the system, if there is an interference with the system, it will show that someone is trying to see this, to do something. And we know that all systems go through what we are going through. So we are still developing the system, and we are taking so many into all those matters into consideration. About the Braille compliant title, that is a matter the ministry has been thinking about, but we shall liaise with the professionals involved with that to see how we can come up with that title. Because we believe not everyone is able to see. They can be conned because they are not seeing what is happening. So those are issues. We want our documents to be friendly to the physically disabled and all that. So that is something we are taking into consideration. And then when we talk of KRA, whether KRA is going to charge you or not, what we are doing is that our system will be linked to the national grid. So if we feed that information, we are able to liaise with all the other government institutions that hold your data, so it should not be a worry. And then I don't see how you'll be charged, and we are converting. That is a government process. So we are liaising with all those organizations, KRA and all. We are all working together. The issue of minimum size, and I'll leave that Maritime to talk about. About the minimum size, what we know is that NLC, the National Land Commission, was looking at that. They were trying to come up with a law which I think haikupita bunge, but Parliament was looking at it. But Mr. Maritime will tell us about that. But we are also requesting the professionals, since you are aware of the law and the planning, the regulations, planning regulations, you should also be able to advise your clients that you cannot go to that tiny bit, because even how will you supply water to that, roads, they might not be accessible. So that's why we are discussing with you today, the professionals included and everyone, that you advise your clients if they want 2,000 persons where you can only get 100, please advise them so that they can maybe go and look for something else to compensate their people. But let's also try to see that we are applying all the law, the Planning Law, Survey Act, and all that when we are dealing with our clients. We need to educate them together so that they understand. So about Embakasi ranching, if you have an issue with Embakasi ranching, we already have a team that is working on the titling of Embakasi ranching. And we have really sensitized Embakasi, we've been part of it. So, if you have a matter for Embakasi, Mr. Nyandoro is here, he's dealing with that matter, and other officers, it's a team. Plus the issues of the board members. We are also working with the board members, so those matters are being resolved, but the clean titles have been issued, the ones that didn't have issues. The others we are still addressing. The issue of by Sarah about missing files. Your files are not missing, but because we are doing digitization, we had to put those files somewhere to be captured. So as we capture those files, we are releasing those files. And maybe next time you see your file, it will be in digital form. We are capturing all that data. But what we do, Mr. Nyandoro is here. If you need a file, you want to search or something, you usually come, this is the file that is required, he looks for that file, then he communicates with you. So that is a matter that we are looking at. Then e-citizen and the titles with banks, and who will surrender the title. The first thing we are doing is conversion. So you will be able to know your conversion. This is your new number. But we are working with the Law Society of Kenya, and we shall also involve the other stakeholders to come up on how to go about that. So that one we are working on that. So I will request Mr. Maritime to address the issues that deal with the issue raised by Nancy Mwangi, and want to assure that the time it will take for you to get a new title will be very clear, and we shall abide by that. So just keep your documents in good order. And I said, the 999 years. You were not there when we were discussing your case. We said, Mr. Nyandoro, after this, discuss with him. He's just sitting next to you, so that we look at where you got stuck. Why isn't your matter moving? So I'll ask the officers to.
When I talked about institutions, I talked about dismantling institutions made the Chinese who are making roads, they approved the Nairobi Water Company pipes. How do you approach that? How do you approach that?
I think that should involve other agencies not here.
Pardon?
You need to involve other water company, the
yes.
Ministry involved and all that. So they're not here. I don't think she can respond to that sort of question. So you can handle that separately.
Where do I channel that problem?
You can talk to them and then you can engage the
No, what I can say is when we plan, yes, because everything starts with planning.
Yes.
There is room for where to, I don't know who's a planner here who can explain a bit what planning involves. There is no way you can have a plot that is not accessible, that we are not able to connect electricity, water, and all that. Those provisions are always there, and they're in the plan. But for the rest of the complaint that you have, maybe it's look at the original plan, how was it done? For the rest of the issues to do with the water company, maybe you address with them, you see how they are doing it, how they are laying their pipes and why they are doing it like that. I don't know whether there is a plan that indicated the pipes should go through there or not. That one I may not be able to tell now.
Excuse me. I think what you do, write a letter to NEMA. Get your team together. There was an EIA done on that road, yes, for that area. Yeah. Go and complain that your water has been stopped for so many residents. Follow up through that route. I'm not saying you'll be very successful in NEMA, but please put it there. That's how we go. The Chinese have been cutting off, flooding people. That's the way to go. Okay. Yeah.
Thank you very much.
And then the issue of sanctions, if someone does not return their title, we shall publish the regulations on how to go about it. Once we also we sit with the law of Kenya, the Law Society of Kenya, and the other stakeholders. So if there are any sanctions, they'll be in that document. Thank you very much. Mr. Maritin, you may proceed.
Madam Land Secretary, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon. I'm here to respond to this question which was asked by my colleague in the profession about tiny plots which went against the planning standards. But fortunately, as the Director of Service, I'm happy to note that no survey has been done on those properties. Therefore, it means that we are there to protect the profession and also to protect the registration of tiny plots. Because when you talk about tiny plots, they belong to tiny people. And we are not tiny people. We respect human beings. We cannot process them. And therefore, the information that is there about that big property has been captured, and maybe it is in the name of the company. So the land is not lost, but it is still in the name of the company. And therefore, these tiny parcels, since they are not surveyed, we don't have their records, we will not survey them. We respect you, human beings. Let me also talk about, I hope I'm answering this one, Madam Nancy. That is it. We are very careful to ensure that you are not issued with any registration instrument on a tiny property, which will look at the end of the day as an abuse to you. There is this generation of LR numbers, the change of use and the changing of numbering, as asked by my colleague, Mr. Madane, and the other participant. That one was happening in the old regime when we were talking about the LR numbers and the deed plans. By asking this question, you are appreciating the fact that now in the new regime of using only RIMs or cadastral maps, we are not going to change numbering. The numbering will remain. Maybe the registration processes will only reflect the new change or the change of use of your property. So this alone is a demonstration that we are going to be more efficient in terms of rendering services and also safeguarding your information to do with your property. About the RIM, about the deed plan which was issued, somebody asked, and this is the final one I had captured. There is somebody who asked about a deed plan which was issued recently, and he is now asking himself whether he should go ahead registering that deed plan, or maybe he should come for an RIM. My advice is, it is better to come back for an RIM, because one, using an RIM for registration is cheaper, because you will not have each and every individual parcel with a deed plan. You know, we are also reducing your cost and time to process those registration documents. So that is what I can say for now, unless somebody is not satisfied.
Thank you very much, Maritim, for that. We really have to close. Madam. Sorry? You still have a question or this?
Because my question is, I understand that, and I've said it's about the land buying companies. They were in the business of making money. So they bought big chunks of land and subdivided without going through the proper process. So my question is, we have, okay, I'm sure they have captured the bigger land as it was bought by the land buying company. But when you go to the ground, we have the people who bought the tiny plot, and they have even some of them developed their homes there. So they have the share certificates. So what do we do so that they are also registered and also appear in the system? That was my question. Because the land is not the block that you have director in your office. On the ground, it's already subdivided.
Okay, Madam, I have been asked by Madam Land Secretary what I mean by tiny plots and tiny people. I was just trying to explain that the planning standards in a professional world, the planning standards was arrived at when it was through some process of study that a human being is supposed to comfortably occupy a parcel of land of this size at minimum for you to be comfortable. So when you have something below that, it becomes a tiny plot. And therefore, we cannot also make you to look tiny. We respect you. That is why we have not processed. I hope that one was not going anywhere else to be negative interpretation that we are demeaning human beings. We are saying that we cannot go down beyond that because you are not tiny. We respect you. Madam, about the shares and the companies and how those properties will be registered, since survey cannot be done, I think it requires some administrative action to ensure that your share becomes a share in that bigger parcel, and maybe now it can be captured in a more efficient way, so that when you will need in future to go look for your property or to be comfortable and secure, you should be issued with something. I don't know that something, but it requires some administrative approach.
Thank you very much. If you are still not very satisfied, I'm sure you can engage one-on-one when you're having our tea break or when having our tea. But I think for now, in the interest of time, we must come to a conclusion of this. I'm sure it has been very, very productive discussion. And the questions that you had when you're walking in, I believe that most of them, if not all of them, have been answered. But this is not the end of this interaction. As you've heard, the ministry has said that they're rolling out a public education process which will go around educating people about various issues. And of course, as CARA, we are happy to work with you as a ministry to ensure that we educate as many people as possible, not just in Nairobi, but across the country, so that this information can reach the right people. So we can have further discussion on this and see how we can be able to support the process of civic education on this particular matter. We also have a number of our members who are not in this room. Some of them have been following online, but some of them are also interested in what we're discussing here. So I'm going to request the ministry to share with us that very elaborate presentation that you did, and also the statement from the CS, because it has some very good issues that are responding to some of the concerns that we've received so far. So you can share that with us, and then you can be able to share the same with our members. And if there is need for any clarification or issues that are not clear, then we can be able to engage through the team that is here. I'm sure we've taken all your contacts, and we'll be knocking on your doors when we have any issues that need your attention. But I think the point is coming out clearly that the whole process and the whole initiative is a positive one. It's in the right direction, but there are fears about trust issues, there's suspicion, and this can only be cured by putting everything on the table in terms of educating the masses. So we need to defray these fears, the trust issues, to ensure that this succeeds, and that's where collaboration in terms of engagement and public education comes in. So ladies and gentlemen, on behalf of CARA, I want to thank you so much. One, for coming for this session, and number two, for being so patient for about 3 hours that we've been here, just to engage and listen to what we are talking about. I also want to thank our members or participants who are following online. I can see most of them have also maintained their presence online to follow through on what we are discussing. And I trust and believe that you've found the session very productive and very useful to the kind of issues that you had around this topic. Lastly, I also want to just inform you, those who are here, that as part of our effort of public education, we are going to have a forum this coming Thursday, but this will be a webinar, online forum, talking about security issues. I know most of our members are concerned about security of their neighborhood, and we are looking at issues of technology, just how we can be able to leverage on technology to improve security within our neighborhood. So if you are yet to get the communication, we'll share it, but if you've gotten the communication, please register to participate. There's a link for registration, and let's learn some more about issue of security. We've talked about land today. On Thursday, we want to talk about security and how we can take advantage of technology to ensure that within our neighborhood, we are safe and we are practicing activities that will enhance our safety and our family. With those remarks, I want to thank very, very much our team that was taking us through this process, beginning with Madam Esther and her entire team. Thank you so much. When we engaged the ministry, we were very keen to hear from you. And of course, we understand that the CS was not able to be here by herself, but I think the team was very strong. The team was the relevant team, and we've learned a lot from you. So please take our regards and appreciation to the CS, and of course to the entire team. And like I said, we'll continue engaging and just ensuring that we are being beneficial to our members and to the entire public. I also want to thank Bwana Ibrahim Wadhane, Chair of Land Development and Governance Institute, and Abraham Samoei, President of Institution of Surveyors of Kenya, who have been able to share with us their perspective and views about our subject of discussion today. And of course, they've added value because they've brought to light issues that we're not able to bring through the presentation. And these are experts that you can be able to engage directly if you wish. You can take their contacts. And I'm sure moving forward, they can be able to support you or facilitate various processes within their areas of expertise. So thank you for your time. Thank you for your patience to be here with us. And thank you for what you've shared with us, which has been very, very useful to the people who are seated here. We can never forget about our partners, Sensitization Foundation, always with us. We've worked with them for more than 10 years, holding various forums, educating people across the country. And this is just one of those forums that we've had with them. And we really, really appreciate your presence here and your support over the years. And of course, to all of you, once again, we could not have had this forum without you. Asanteni sana for coming, and asanteni sana for participating actively. And we look forward to continue working with you. Like I said at the beginning, last year we were not able to have our physical forums like we normally do because of what we all know, the COVID-19 situation. But this is the first forum we are having, physical forum, after the COVID-19 pandemic broke. So we are trying to see how it will work out. And so far, we think that we are now good to resume our activities in terms of physical meetings. So you'll see more of us, you'll see more of communication, inviting you to this kind of engagement. And please, when you get that invitation, as always, please join us and let's continue learning and educating each other. So with those remarks, I want to say asanteni sana. And we have some refreshment out there, some tea and snacks. Please have a bite as we continue to interact and, of course, learning from each other. So I want us to close with a word of prayer. We started with a word of prayer. And I'm seeing our brother from the Muslim faith. If you can pray for us a closing prayer so that we can be able to break, because that with somebody from Christian. Please.
Asante. Mjambo nyote. Naomba tuweze kutoa shukrani kwa Mwenyezi Mungu kwa kuomba maombi ya kufunga. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Kwa jina la Mwenyezi Mungu mwingi wa rehema, mwenye kurehemu. Ewe Mola wetu ambaye kwamba umekuwa mwema kwetu tangia hapo asubuhi. Kule tulitoka mbali, sehemu mbalimbali, tukaweza kufika hapa kwa sababu ya kuweza kujukumika katika masuala mbalimbali ambayo kwamba yanajadiliwa hapa na wale ambao kwamba ni waelekezi wetu ambao walipanga kikao kama hiki ama forum kama hii. Mungu ni asante kwako kwa kutupa nguvu na uwezo wa kuweza kuyanena hapa na kufundishana na kuelimishana na kuelekezana kwa ajili ya jambo kama hili. Mungu wetu ambaye kwamba ni mwema kwa sababu ya uhai, kwa sababu ya nguvu, na ile nguvu ambayo kwamba tumeiona hapa inatoka kwako. Mungu ambaye ni mfalme wa falme, muumba wa mbingu na nchi, tunakuomba wakati kama huu kwa unyenyekevu. Tunakuomba kwa wakati huu tukiwa sisi ni wanyonge, ni dhaifu kwako. Bila wewe hakuna chochote ambacho kwamba kinawezekana. Na yale yote ambayo tumeyajadili hapa, tunakuomba ya Mungu uyawezeshe kutimia na yaweze kuwafikia wale ambao kwamba hawakuwepo hapa, wako kule mashinani katika taifa letu tukufu la Kenya. Ewe Mola wetu, tutazidi kukushukuru na kuomba kila wakati, kwa sababu sisi tunakutegemea wewe kwa msaada na nguvu na mambo yetu yote. Tunamuomba Mwenyezi Mungu kwa haya yote ambayo kwamba yamekuwa hapa yameendelea katika mapenzi yako. Tutakapotoka hapa tuweze kurudi kwetu, basi Mungu uwe nasi, utulinde, utuhifadhi, kwa sababu ya zile vyombo ambavyo kwamba tunakwenda kuvitumia ni vyombo ambavyo vimetengenezwa na mikono ya binadamu. Havina ukamilifu, kwani ukamilifu unatoka kwako. Na Mwenyezi Mungu, tunasikia kwamba kuna kikao kingine ambacho kwamba kitakuwa wiki hii hapo siku ya Alhamisi. Tunakuomba Mwenyezi Mungu tuweke hai, na wale ambao watakaojaliwa kuweza kufika waweze kufika ili kuweza kuendeleza forum kama hii. Mungu ni asanti, Mungu mweza, Mungu mwenye power, Mungu ambaye kwamba anasikia na ni Mungu ambaye kwamba anakubali yote. Tunasema ni wewe tu na ni wewe tu wa kusifiwa na wa kutukuzwa, ni wewe Mwenyezi Mungu. Amin, amin, amin.
Asante. Asante sana, nashukuru sana. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. There's some forms that were given. If you're not handed back yours, please do.
So that we can have them for our records. Others, asanteni sana, and God bless.